The regular meeting of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee will now begin.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Strand. I'm the chair of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee. It is Friday, April 30th, 2021, and it's now 8:04 a.m. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. Due to the declared local health pandemic, I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thorbjorn Adam.
Present.
Zechariah Aiden.
Present.
Jocelyn Beard.
Present.
John Bernstein.
Here.
Steve Brandt.
Here.
James Brown.
Here.
Luke Cunningham.
Here.
Sonia DeGarmo.
Here.
Scott Engel. Amity Foster.
Present.
William Gullickson. William Gullickson.
Here.
Lisa Hustad. Risa Hustad. Katie Jones.
Present.
Matt Kazinka. Matt Kazinka. Richard LaRoe. Richard LaRoe. Erica Mauter. Oh,
Rich is here.
Richard. Okay. Erica Mauter.
Here.
Dan McConnell. Dan McConnell. Dan Miller.
Here.
George Montague.
Present.
Toso.
Here.
Todd Schumann.
Here.
Eric Wan.
Present.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Here.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Present.
With that, there are 20 people present.
Risa.
members.
I am also present. Let me know if you can't hear me. This is
Risa?
Risa.
Okay.
Thank you.
So is that 21?
That's 21.
So we have a quorum? Yes.
That's correct.
Thank you. With that, we'll proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. So as we have been doing this year with Click, I would ask members when making a motion to state your name, and then when doing a second, likewise. And for the sake of efficiency, I'd like to, without objection, take adoption of the agenda, item 2, and acceptance of the meeting minutes from April 24th, 2021 as a single motion. Is there a motion?
So moved. This is Erica.
Is there a second?
Willie Bridges, second.
So we have a motion and second properly made. Is there any discussion on that? If not, then the clerk will call a roll, please.
Thorbjorn Adam.
Aye.
Zach Aiden.
Aye.
Jocelyn Beard.
Aye.
John Bernstein.
Aye.
Steve Brandt.
Aye.
James Brown.
Aye.
Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Sonia DeGarmo.
Aye.
Scott Engel. Engel. Amity Foster.
Aye.
William Gullickson.
Aye.
Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Katie Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka. Richard LaRoe.
Aye.
Erica Mauter.
Aye.
Dan McConnell. Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Todd Schumann.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
Chair Jeff Strand.
Aye.
There's 21 ayes.
Very good. The agenda is adopted. The meeting minutes from April 24th are approved. Agenda item 4 is open discussion for CLIC members prior to our question and answer sessions for the capital budget requests, or CBRs, for the viewing public. I want to also ask if Vice Chair Willie Bridges has anything, or if the Transportation and Human Development Task Force chairs or vice chairs have any points at this point.
None for me.
Thanks, Willie.
I have a simple reminder. I've received some inquiries on the side regarding comments. I've been asking people to just keep notes, and we'll discuss individual comments a little later in our group sessions.
Thanks, Eric.
This is John. I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from members? We also have the advance questions for the Q&A that were submitted, and if there's no objection, we will look at those first to sort of break the ground with the staff, and then intermingle those with our virtual in-person Q&A if there's no objection. I see in the chat new member William Graves. Welcome.
Jeff, this is Robert. I do want to confirm we've got those questions, and I think can bring them up as needed. At this point, I think we're just waiting for city staff to join for the Q&A portion.
Well, we can just take a short break, or we can, if there's nothing further about the task force.
Jeff,
going into breakout sessions.
Yep, Jeff, this is Justin. I just want to mention, you highlighted that Bill is on the call. Congratulations to Bill, Katrina, and Eamon for their appointments going through council. Those will be official at the end of next week, and we'll get them to take the oath of office, and they will join as official members. And also congratulations to those who just went through the process. I know Jake is going to take his oath shortly, and we had Zachariah join and Kai join as official members. So appreciate everybody going through the appointment process, taking their oath, and joining in official capacity. And it does look like Dan also has his hand up.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, this is just a question, I think, to the staff, in that we have another public input session coming up at the end of next week. And did the last public input session, did that notice go out to neighborhood organizations? It was my understanding that it was going to go out through NCR, but I don't know if it ever went out or not.
Yeah, Dan, this is Justin. I can answer that question. There was language put together by staff and sent to the executive committee to share with neighborhood relations. They did receive that information. It was pretty close to when the first public input session was going to take place. I'm just given that timeline, but they did send that out. How that was distributed or who it got distributed to, I'm less aware because that's really their expertise, but that information was given to them with the hope that they could spread the word prior to the first one and then maybe highlight that there was the second one if folks couldn't join the first time around.
That may be worth confirming with them as to who that's gone out to, just to hope that we could, make sure that people are aware of it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Dan. And
Sure, thanks, Dan.
I'm off. I'm taking vacation from work today for this meeting, so I will personally reach out to Stephen Gallagher because I have some NRP business that I have to talk with Stephen about as well. We have Steve Brandt and Eric Wan.
Steve, you're muted.
Hello, Steve. You want to unmute, or otherwise we'll just jump to Eric and come back to Steve.
Okay, a request here, whenever that notice comes out from NCR, if you could get it also to us as individuals. Many of us, if not all of us, are members of neighborhood associations, and we can get it out via that means as well. So thank
you, Eric. Point well spoken. Steve?
Sorry, I have enough glare out here. I couldn't find my cursor to unmute myself. I wanted to just mention that I also separately made a request through David Rubidor at NCR and Sarah McKenzie that these two public input sessions get better publicity on the city's social media accounts than they have in the past. I don't know if that happened or not. And the second point I wanted to just ask staff was, have the rosters been updated somewhere for the benefit of members so we know who the new people are and have the spellings of their names, etc.?
Absolutely, great question, Steve. The current roster would be accessed via the SharePoint or through Teams. If you go into the documents, into general, the roster is there. Because we've had frequent updates, I've just been, instead of emailing it consistently as it gets changed, the latest version is there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Any update from arrival of presenters? I'm showing 30 participants in our meeting, 21 members, plus pending. So if there are no other questions, or why don't we come back at 20 after? I'm just going to get a warm up on coffee. Is that okay, Robert?
Jeff,
Or
that
were you
sounds
gonna-
good. We'll ping you once staff arrives.
So confirming with staff that there's no change to our adopted presentation agenda. So we have the scheduled finance and property services, public ground and facilities, and municipal building commission. Excuse me, at 8:30, and then a break at 10:20, and then we resume with community planning, economic development, and park board at 10:30 a.m. and a break at 12:20 p.m. and then task force breakout sessions.
Jeff, this is Robert. I certainly haven't heard of any update to the schedule, and I do want to take a moment now to just welcome Property Services Director Barbara O'Brien has been able to join us this morning. I believe we have a few others from the Property Services Division who are planning on being on the call as well, and I'm not sure if I see them on yet, but I do want to at this time welcome Barbara.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you all for your time and your dedication to this process. It's very meaningful. My name is Barbara O'Brien, and I'm the Director of Property Services. I've been in this role for just over 1 year, and truly look forward to working with each of you. Thank you. Robert, I can confirm that several members from our team, Property Services team, will be joining. They were anticipating hopping on the call at 8:30. I know we're a little bit advanced of that, just running a little bit early, but I am expecting Rod Olson from the radio shop. I am expecting Bob Friddle from Design and Construction, Chris Bacchus from Design and Construction, and as well as Brian Milberg from Energy.
Great, thank you. We'll keep an eye out for them in the attendees list. We have a few questions that were submitted in advance that we have the ability to pull up for the benefit of Click here, and to the extent that Click members have any questions that they've brought today for the question and answer session too, we'll have opportunity to go through those as well. Sounds like once the rest of the team joins.
Bob?
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
So we're playing the PowerPoint slides and then having questions for each one, right? Not just questions, right?
Yeah, typically, this is Jeff Strand, Click Chair. So typically we'll just do like a 10-15 minute intro with the department director and a high level overview, so we get grounded, and then we'll segue into the questions. We have some questions that were sent in advance, and then we'll have the virtual in-person questions. So
okay.
Robert usually cues things up, and so whenever Finance and Property Services is ready to go, we're ready to go.
Okay, sounds good. I think Chris Bach is coming from another meeting, so he might be slightly late, but he only has a couple presentations that usually fall or in the middle.
I think we can begin.
Okay. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.
So this is Robert. Bob, if you have a presentation you'd like to, I don't know, just do a quick recap for Click members at this point, I think we can share control of the presentation with you. And then we'll have handy, I think, a series of questions that were submitted in advance.
I'm not sure what you mean, Robert. You're playing the presentations, correct?
Oh, I'm sorry. No. So we have the video presentations that were presented to Click member via the video recordings. Just to be absolutely clear, as I try and kind of wrangle different materials for this meeting here, those presentations have already been disseminated to the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee. Members have had some opportunity to go through those videos already, but may also, time permitting, may still be working through some of those videos. And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but we weren't planning on replaying the presentation videos at this time. I think this is an opportunity. If staff are so willing and want to, a brief recap is always welcome. Otherwise, we certainly have, we certainly have a few questions that have already been submitted in advance, and we can kind of jump into those to the extent possible. We've shared a few of those questions out with departments so that they have the ability to, kind of work through. And we do have those up on the screen. We do have those that we can kind of bring up and use to kick things. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine with me. I'll be happy to kind of recap the presentation to start each discussion. If you, I don't have any concern about particular order, so if you just want to start from the top of your list and introduce one, we can go from there.
Okay, so I think we can bring up the written questions that were submitted in advance. There were certainly a few. The first couple touch on the fire station projects.
Right.
Okay, I can bring those up, Robert. I believe those are Steve's questions then, if we're going to start with those ones.
Right, so while he's doing that, I'll say I'm Bob Friddle. I'm Director of Facilities Design and Construction for Property Services Division of Finance and Property Services. And I've recorded the majority of our presentations and participated in the development of the capital budget requests with our team. Chris Bacchus will be joining me today along with Brian Milberg and Rod Olson from our group for their particular expertise on a couple of capital budget requests. But starting with the 3 fire projects, Fire 11, Fire 12, and Fire 14. Fire 11 is coincidentally Fire Station 11, which is on the northeast side of town. Fire 12 is Fire Station 1 downtown, a replacement, also a replacement. And Fire Station 14 is Fire 14 is Fire Station 19, which is located in the heart of the University of Minnesota campus. Starting with Fire Station 11, just to briefly recap, the intent is to relocate it to the current water yard on Hennepin Avenue to get it closer to a major arterial street and closer to the area it serves, which includes a large industrial area to the north and east of there. So it is dependent upon moving the water department to the Hiawatha Maintenance Facility campus expansion site at the former Roof Depot warehouse that the city purchased 6 years ago. And that project is Water 18, which is also in development and a capital budget request that we'll be talking about later. It won't take up the entire water yard site, so there will be some available property for redevelopment once we get that figured out, but we haven't started planning that project yet. Fire 12 is Fire Station 1 downtown, part of a 3/4 block development that will relocate it to the western corner where it's currently located on the eastern corner of that block. And in the deal with Sherman Associates, the developer, they will build the station for us, and then we'll sell the existing station to them. They'll tear it down and complete their housing development on that site. That project is in final stages of design, and the terms of the development contract are set to go to the council in the following cycle. Fire Station 19 we were approached by the university foundation that wants to develop the block that it's on and has requested that we consider a new location yet to be identified to the east or northeast of the stadium on property they own, currently parking lot areas. And that's a long-range project. It's on their long-range plan, so it's on our long-range plan now too. They would presumably help with financing of that relocation. And we haven't really talked with them about terms of that deal, but it would be significant help, certainly, because the station that we have currently is an operating station in decent condition. So the questions that we got about the fire station projects actually apply to all of our projects in a way. Starting with these comparative stations that we're using, we haven't built a new station for quite some time. We've done some remodelings to existing stations and small additions of apparatus bays, but not a whole new station. For Fire Station 12, we got separate cost estimates. I'm sorry, for Fire 12, which is Fire Station 1, we got separate cost estimates now that have been confirmed based on design development drawings for roughly $12 million construction cost. Now, every fire station is a little different, and some have more larger apparatus bays than others. Some have 2 crews instead of 1. The last station that we built was Fire Station 6, I believe, which is down by the convention center, and that was some time ago. So cost for the stations and operating costs. With the new stations, we're typically going from gang toilets and gang bedrooms to individual bedrooms and shared toilets. So we have more toilets in a station now, more rooms, and that costs more to build and more to operate. But the square footage doesn't increase a lot, but some. And once again, every station is a little different depending on the site and the service area and the crews it supports. The station downtown actually has some additional command staff there, and so it's going to be larger than most.
Steve, sorry, Bob. So not to interrupt, Steve Brandt has hand raised, and then if people are not asking, could you mute your background so we don't get extraneous sounds?
Yes,
Thanks.
I'm sorry about that. My dog's excited about this.
Bob, my question is actually 2 questions related to fire. I thought the department was generally getting away from 2-story buildings, but I noticed that Fire Station 1 would be a 2-story building, while Fire Station 11 would be a 1-story building. That's one question, why the difference? And then has the U given any indication that it's willing to contribute financially? I know you said that you haven't really gotten very far into that discussion yet. And do they have power to compel you to move that, the current station, like power of condemnation, or who is more sovereign here in terms of citing, keeping or replacing the current station?
Okay, I'll take the second one first. Thanks, Steve. They do not have power of condemnation. Our fire station is on our property, so they want to work with us. They've indicated that they would be contributing significantly to the move cost, but we haven't talked about any numbers at all. And it would be dependent upon the timing and the new location and that kind of thing. As to 2-story versus 1-story, In a fire station design, the apparatus bay is a kind of a story and a half space. So we can't, it doesn't make sense to put a second story on top of it. But in Fire 12's instance, we can put, we can stack the other functions, the non-apparatus bay functions, on 2 stories and be more efficient with the space, especially downtown where property values are much higher than outside of downtown. So where we have property that we can use outside of downtown that is less expensive, it does make sense to have everything on 1 story and forego the traditional fire poles down from the 2nd story. Getting on to the other question regarding sustainable design. All of our current building projects are forecast and estimated to be at least LEED Silver, as that is the directive that we have from council at this time for new construction. And they're not necessarily, we're not directed to get certification on those buildings, but on our larger capital projects, when we request funding, we normally go for LEED Gold and certification. And so that's been what I would call an informal standard for the past 10 years or so as we built new buildings. So the East Side maintenance facility was built to LEED Gold and certified. The new downtown office building has been built to LEED Gold and will be certified. They haven't finished that process yet. Other projects in design are mostly being designed to LEED Gold. And the city also has a concurrent effort on sustainability policy that will be enacted very soon that will go beyond the LEED Gold in terms of sustainability for both city projects and developer projects. But right now we don't have direction from council to go to a more expensive and aggressive sustainable stance on these capital projects. So other questions?
We have Katrina.
Yes, hi. I know I'm pretty familiar with all of the standards that the city and the state have, but that doesn't mean that if you presented a project that was, I mean, LEED Gold is already outdated as LEED Platinum because they're already at LEED Zero, which is zero carbon, you know, wastewater energy. And if we really are the city, one of the leading cities in the country, I think if you presented something with the budget that was trying to meet LEED Zero, then that would be up to us to convince the city council that it was worth it, because this is what I do. So it's incredibly cost effective. There's payback, and just using the standards that the city has currently, by the time the building is built, it's already outdated, and these buildings last. They're, you know, in the system for 50 to 70 years. So I would suggest that you act aggressively. It's better to go after it and not get it than not go after it.
I agree. I wholeheartedly, I've been a proponent of sustainable design all of my life, all of my professional life, and have worked hard to get these projects to be as sustainable as possible, because the payback for the city is good. And I've worked closely with other members of our division, Brian Milberg, our energy director, and Rob Berkey, our facilities director. We do go beyond LEED Gold in many ways in terms of our building automation controls and in terms of designing every building with the capacity for solar on the roof, and very high efficiency boilers and chillers and good envelopes and insulation. Once again, though, our division takes direction from council on what the requirements are. I think it's fair for us to look at what it takes to get to LEED Platinum. We are using LEED Gold version 4, which is fairly recent. And if we can get to Platinum practically, we can. And we're always looking for ways to exceed Gold. And we can certainly start to look at some of these projects for LEED Zero and carbon neutral design, at least to find out what the additional cost would be, and ask for consideration of that additional cost.
Okay, I think with the LEED Zero standards and the 2030 zero standards, I think they're more achievable than what people think. I mean, I live in an affordable LEED Platinum house, and it was very easy. And the payback was 5 years on the upgrades. I just can't reiterate that enough, that to start presenting really aggressive stuff to the city council. Because, hey, if you get some of it, but you'll probably see this comment in just about every building project. And I've worked with Brian Milberg on a solar project, so I'm pretty up to date on what's going on with the solar stuff too. So thank you.
Good. I'll say one more thing. We, our buildings are high energy users compared to houses. We have a number of buildings that are 24/7 operations, and so we're very thoughtful about finding ways to keep our energy use low. So I think I see a question from Jeffrey Strand.
Yes, Katrina, are you done?
For now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, question on the, sorry, I'm managing two screens here. On Fire 11, now I'm sorry if I can't tell, is the fire chief here today at all? And what citywide functionalities will be serviced out of this proposed new station, since the old station is from 1925, so I know 100 years is not really old in fire station in my experience on Click, but I didn't see it in the narrative, but isn't the citywide hazmat response, or is that shifted elsewhere? And so as a resident in Ward 4 who lives close to the Canadian Pacific transcontinental rail line that has a lot of hazardous materials bisecting our community, and being somewhat distant from this site, the interplay of this and the roof depot redevelopment for public infrastructure serving a citywide need seems to be something I'd like you to clarify, the interplay and intersection of those functions.
The hazmat unit will stay at Fire Station 11, and it serves the industrial area to the north and east of there in particular. So being closer to Hennepin Avenue will give it quicker response time for those areas. So I don't believe the chief is here. He's welcome to chime in if he is. But as for interplay between that project and the Hiawatha campus expansion, as I said before, the relocation of Fire 11 is dependent upon freeing up a site, which is the water yard, the current water yard on Hennepin and 5th. that would provide a site for the new station, so we could build a station, move them into it, and then turn the old station over for redevelopment. And so it's been waiting for the progress on the Hiawatha Maintenance Facility expansion that would move the water department off of that site.
Thank you. James is next.
Yeah, my question is about, you had mentioned, well, let's see the number here. So we're talking about the Hiawatha Training and Recruitment Center, just, I guess, because they're connected with the Water 11.
Actually, Water 18 is the relocation of the water services to, and the Hiawatha Training and Recruitment Center is a separate project on the Roof Depot site that has separate capital budget funding, yes.
But I guess there's a strong connection between the two projects.
Yes.
And you'd mentioned a percentage of the Roof Depot site could be reserved for, you know, there's been a ton of community engagement about that site and alternative proposals from the community. It's, you know, it's a highly visible project, maybe the most visible one we've got going right now.
Yes.
In that community. Are you able to be more specific, or can we get more specific about what percentage or of the project could be reserved for some of those alternative uses? Or it's one of the few projects I think that might get a lot of kickback if we just kind of, could seem tone deaf if we just kind of don't address it specifically in this quick report or time.
Right, yes, and I'll be happy to. Do you want to wrap up the questions on the 3 fire projects and then move to Water 18 and the Training and Recruitment Center projects next, just to make this discussion easily to follow in the recording? Or
sounds like a proposal, Bob. Why don't we just say, are there any other questions on fire?
That's
if there are no other questions on fire, then we'll conclude the fire station and move to the next project.
I see a hand up here. James, you had your hand up, I believe, or?
That was my question was just in the connection between those two projects and about the percentage of the Roof Depot site. Yeah.
Okay, so seeing no other questions on the fire projects, Robert, you okay moving to Water 18 next?
Yeah, I think that makes sense if that's where the discussion, where folks want the discussion to go, sure.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I'll recap that quickly. Water 18 is a relocation of the water yard and meter testing facilities currently on the north side, both along Hennepin and at the Fridley Water Campus, to the proposed expanded Hiawatha Maintenance Facility campus. So in 2016, the city purchased the Roof Depot warehouse, formerly Sears Roebuck warehouse, with the intent to tear it down and expand the existing Hiawatha campus to the south, roughly doubling its size. It's about 7 acres now, and that would increase it to about 14 acres. And as we studied the master plan for that project, we saw a number of other opportunities there and efficiencies for the city and public works. The city has central stores there, which is a finance operation that supplies paper products and cleaning products and tools and all kinds of things to city functions, to the school system, to the parks department, to the housing board, and they are in a very antiquated building that is not an appropriate workspace, and they're in a location on the site that is very congested for people to be able to stop by and pick things up, right along with a fuel station there that creates a tremendous amount of congestion. So the opportunity with purchasing the Roof Depot site was to gain additional land and access to 28th Street so that vehicles could come and go by both 26th and 28th, and then have land available to move the water department there, also to move the surface water and sewer vac trucks from a building we call the annex or the tin building down on the South Transfer site. There are 4 large vac trucks that we would move to this site into new vehicle storage bays, and also to move surface water and sewer engineering from the City of Lakes building, which we are clearing out of, to the rest of the surface water and sewer staff, so that they can coordinate more closely on planning and construction projects for surface water and sewer. This project would also accommodate improved fleet maintenance so that we didn't have to take vehicles that are at that site to the Curry maintenance facility downtown for maintenance. It's actually, we'll still do heavy maintenance at the Curry site, but lighter vehicle maintenance will be able to be done at the Hiawatha maintenance facility expanded site. And we'll relocate the existing salt and sand and CIPP cast in place pipeliner operations and asphalt patching operations on the site for better circulation and to move them farther away from the neighborhood. And also adding a new wash bay for vehicle maintenance, and additional structured parking to accommodate the additional staff and city vehicles that'll be there and equipment that'll be there. And then finally, at staff direction from City Council a couple of years ago, we would be incorporating a new recruitment and training facility that would allow us to train not only city employees, but potential employees. Currently, anybody who wants a job in public works construction needs training that is provided in Lino Lakes and Hinckley, which are quite far away and difficult for a lot of people in the city to get to. There's no public transportation, obviously, that goes that far. And so we'd be able to do training and recruitment on site. And that building would have computer classrooms and computer simulation classrooms that would be available after hours and on weekends for the community. It would also have community space that would be available after hours and on weekends, as well as some retail space and some business generator space. So we're really excited about the opportunity there. That building would be in the southwest corner of the site along Longfellow Avenue and at the corner of Longfellow and 28th. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of potential for sharing of resources. There are storage yards there for gravel and sand that can be shared between different public works divisions, and better organization and circulation and safety, as well as improving working conditions, especially for people moving from the water yard where they're currently have a second floor conference room / locker room with no elevator and other ADA impediments. So that's a general breakdown of that project. Now, to address your comment about the current neighborhood concerns that have been going on for a long time, they have an alternative plan and desire for the site, and Property Services and Public Works have met with them on many occasions over the past 3 or 4 years as the planning has gone on. We have tried to compromise with them. At one point, we offered them 2 acres of the site, and they, the neighborhood group, said that that wasn't good enough and refused to work with us on that compromise. They're asking for, I believe, 3 acres, which would include part of the existing Roof Depot warehouse building, and would obstruct Public Works' ability to gain access to 28th Street for a second entrance and exit to the site. The Roof Depot building has been decommissioned. The boiler, which was a heavily polluting boiler, has been shut down and taken apart, and the asbestos from the building has been removed. So right now, it's not a habitable building. There have been some roof leaks. There is some mold in the building. The water has been shut off for a long time. The electricity has been shut off for a long time, and there has been some theft of copper. Right now it would take a few $1 million to rehabilitate to even make it habitable. So the plan is to do a phased construction there, starting with the demolition of that building and temporary capping of that site for temporary parking, which would then allow us to move parking off the existing site and start construction on an addition to the office building and a parking structure and stormwater cistern on the north half. And then the next phase after that would be the development of the water buildings and the recruitment and training center on the Roof Depot site.
Thanks, Bob. So we have others in queue. We have Willie, who hasn't asked a question yet. If Willie is still here, I think he had to step out. Willie, Steve, and then back to James. And then I think time check, we should target 9:30, I think, for this category, because we also have Municipal Building Commission to get through before 10:20. So Willie, Steve, James.
Yeah, my question is, this Hiawatha site has been a conversation with Click for some time. What would happen if you gave them the 3 acre? What are they going to do with it? And what would happen if you gave them? Do you have to have it? I understood you said you need it for another building, but do you have to? Because that has been an ongoing conversation with Click about that area, how the community really didn't want over there, period.
Right. Well, the city has established procedures for giving or for what is the term? Divesting from property that it's decided that it no longer needs, and that's done through CPED typically. It's typically sold at market rates. And if other city or government uses can't be found for it, and so that would be a decision that council would have to make. The water fund, the water enterprise fund, purchased the land, and the water enterprise fund would have to be reimbursed somehow according to city policies. So that would be up to council.
Steve?
You mute, Steve.
Sorry, I'd like to not so much ask a question as make a comment here. This project should not be a surprise to the community. The master plan for this area dates back to the early 90s when Public Works proposed consolidating many of its activities on this site. I have been in the facilities of the East Yard, which would be moved to this site, and it is in dire need of replacement. we've got a city, his title is blacksmith, but his job duty is actually more welder, doing his job on a wooden floor. We've got city equipment being stored in two 19th century buildings. I just think that it's imperative that this project get moving along with the Hiawatha Training and Recruitment Center. I know the community has seen this as a detriment, but it seems to me, rather than viewing this as bringing more vehicles to East Phillips, it might be appropriate to look at this as bringing jobs and job training through the recruitment center to the neighborhood in a way that might benefit as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. We have James, Eric, and Dan.
My question is about 2600 Minnehaha. That's only, it's a city-owned property that is an acre and a half. That's about 800 feet or so from that. Has there been any consideration with that site taking over, being able to do more at the water site with what the community's asking and using that 1.5 acre site on 26 Minnehaha?
We have not done any planning for that site. I know that that site was offered to the neighborhood group for their aquaponics operation, and they declined it, was my understanding. But we have not done any planning for alternatives that might use that site to help offset use of the site that's adjacent to our current maintenance facility.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up, obviously this is a really complicated thing, but the whole Roof Depot site is walkable from a neighborhood that really needs a lot. And yeah, maybe there's a way that some of those services could happen at 26 Minnehaha to be able to accommodate the full, request of the neighborhood. I don't know. I think it's an important thing, but I would love to see a compromise be made, I guess. So that's all.
Okay, thank you, James. Eric and Dan, and then unless your hands are back up again, Steve.
Yeah,
So
Bob,
Eric and Dan.
Great, thank you, Bob. I believe you may have answered my question. The Roof Depot, when purchased and authorized by the City Council, was specific for the maintenance facility. And any other uses beyond the maintenance facility requires the action of selling off that piece of surplus property that's not necessary. If the community wants to use it, would the community purchase whatever property they want from the city in order to have those other services? Because if the services provided by that property, the Roof Depot property, is not consistent with what the council originally appropriated the money for, then that would not be a legally possible deal. Is that correct?
I think you're correct. If that property was to be sold, if the council was to decide whether to sell that property or a part of it, they'd have to consider city policies that are in place for selling such property. And so normally that would put the property up on the marketplace and not for sale directly to a particular group. But once again, that's a council decision.
Great, thank you. I was sure it wasn't our decision or your decision. That really is something the council will have to decide on.
Right.
Thanks, Eric. Dan McConnell next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll just encourage fellow Click members to the council on Wednesday, I think it was, at the POGO meeting, had extensive discussion around this project and voted 8-5 to move forward with it, at least through the environmental receiving the environmental worksheet, right? And, I thought Councilmember Fletcher's comments were really on point about this. There's concerns about environmental impacts from the site. The current east side yard, Councilmember Fletcher's indicated he had zero complaints about any environmental impacts from the current place. As Steve Brandt mentioned, the existing facility is subpar at least, and holes in the floor, hazardous to its workers. And I would just encourage people that want to know more about this to listen to that council discussion, because I think you get a good sense of both sides. And I'm probably on the side that would be in favor of moving forward with the project. I just want to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'll note that the environmental worksheet is actually being forwarded to the biz committee next week from CPED. So it'll be discussed at that meeting as well.
Thanks. So should we, Bob, it looks like you have what, 2, 4, 6, 8, 7 or 8 more projects to go over?
Quite a few more, and
yeah, let's.
I know we don't have a lot of time, so if you just want to go to questions you have, or just name it and see if people have questions, we can just do that. And the other ones don't probably require as much of a summary as I've done.
Can you just walk us through? Can you do? You're doing MPD 04 and 5.
Sure. So MPD 04 and 5 are 2 new police precinct stations. One would be for precinct 4 on the north side, and one would be for precinct 1 relocation in the downtown area. Precinct 4 was presented last year. It really hasn't changed. There's a desire to make it find a more central location in the precinct for it to better serve its community and to improve conditions there. Precinct 1 is new and follows the model of Fire 12 for the downtown fire station, of working with a developer to have them build to suit for us as part of a larger development project. This is a way that seems to work well for us in the downtown area to allow us to participate in larger development projects, to use land more wisely downtown. And so the plan that was shown in that presentation is a very, very highly conceptual plan that helped us get to a conceptual cost estimate so that we could propose this project to Click for the first time. And I'll entertain any questions on it.
We have Eric and then Katrina.
Bob, yeah, from last year's Click report, I'd like to read a section. I don't know if you read it in the comment section regarding MPD facilities. Bob, did you recall reading that section?
I'm not sure which section you're talking about, so.
Okay, I'll read it. Consequently, in the case of investments in the MPD capital infrastructure, Click members believe there is insufficient evidence of the direction of public policies to set priorities. The range of possibilities can include downsizing the police function, reform and decentralization, retraining of the police force, and adding supportive non-police workers at the precincts. Therefore, Click advises the mayor and city council to delay all MPD capital infrastructure investments until clear policies are established that harmonize the requirements of federal, state, county, city, and community strategic and operational priorities.
Right. Yes, I am familiar with that statement and appreciate it.
Has that been remedied?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Has that been remedied?
I wouldn't say that it's been remedied. I would hope that that's in process, but that's not in the hands of property service. And so it has caused us to withhold additional capital budget requests for other things like the 3rd precinct replacement. But I think it still makes sense for these projects to be on the capital long range budget process. And so we'll continue to submit them and hope that policymakers will find ways to support these projects in the future, and will be ready to reevaluate them as appropriate as we get direction from policymakers.
Katrina?
Yeah, sorry about that. Was I mistaken, or did we also look at the 4th precinct?
That was a separate capital budget request too that was submitted last year, I believe, for the first time.
Yeah, but you went over it, right?
I just
mentioned that there was going to be
mentioned that we're looking for a more central location so that we can serve the community better with it.
Well, since I'm not new on here, I'm really glad that Eric read through last year's suggestion as far as waiting on any of these projects, and living in Ward 4, having a building move from its current location rather than looking at decentralizing is really problematic. And I think for this community to have such a, as stated in the proposal, having such a huge centralized structure of police in a community that's already over-policed, I think is really problematic. So I think that hopefully after the council decides what they're going to do with the charter or the charter amendments, that somebody can go back and look at decentralizing and maybe making satellite buildings and keeping the building that's currently there, maybe renovating it. I know from a carbon standpoint, reusing a building is now more appropriate, and maybe adding smaller satellites rather than some big, huge complex in the 4th precinct.
Okay, we have, oh, sorry, Katrina, whenever Willie is next.
I don't know if that makes any sense or anything, but that's just a comment.
Willie Bridges.
I'm here. Anyway, regarding the precinct 4, I've got family and friends who live over North Side. They want a police department over there. They also talked about this new design that can be a combination of a community service building, similar to what they did with the precinct over by First Avenue. So there are people on the North Side who want a cop. They want the negative behavior to stop, but they want a police. So I disagree with the last speaker, because my friends been over there. They lived over there. They've been raised over there, and that's what they see. They don't like the ugliness of the building on Plymouth. They don't like that look.
All right, thanks, Willie. We have John next in queue.
I'm just going to make a brief comment. I think we're starting to get a little bit off track here, so I just want to. We have a lot of people, so sort of do a little reminder here. We're the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. Comment that Eric read makes some of what the policymakers are going to decide to do or not decide to do relevant to us, because clearly you don't want to sink a lot of money, literally millions of dollars, into buildings and then discover you're going to go a different direction and have a building not that function. Beyond that, as far as having personal opinions about which direction they ought to go, we're all certainly welcome to those, but this is not the venue for that. That is up to the policymakers. We're all certainly have the right and should advocate for whatever it is you believe, but this forum is not the place to discuss that. Solely the fact that they do need to make a decision about that, and once they do, then we're able to gauge these projects. And the people that are presenting on here today are not the people to talk to and ask for accountability around that comment. That's the elected officials.
Thanks, John. And just a reminder, members, you will have an opportunity during your task force meetings and future click sessions as we deliberate on comments and also on the funding recommendations. So Bob, we have PSD 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, radio 2.
And 20.
I'm willing, I understand we're running short on time. I'm willing to take questions on any of the projects. I understand there were some questions on RADO2 as well that I believe Rod Olson is here to help answer.
Yes, thank you. And then let's do that. And then we have Steve. Steve may be following up on that.
Well, could I get some clarification, Jeff? I assume that if we put inquiries in the spreadsheet that the staff would address them without us having to raise them again today. I've got several in there, but I'd be glad to ask them if you want me to go ahead and repeat what I've asked. On PSD 20, which is the new public service building and which is now completed, and the city hall renovations, to accommodate the departments that are moving in from other buildings that the city plans to dispose of. I just want to clarify, in April of 2018, Click was essentially told that the new public service building and the associated renovations could be financed by a variety of sources that would be outside of the net debt bond allocation. And I wanted to clarify whether the 9.4 million that is now being sought for PSD 20, which is all of a sudden in the capital budgeting program of the city after the new public service building basically did an end run around the process. Are you seeking that 9.4 million from the net debt bond allocation that Click is trying to determine how to use? Because my understanding was that it was supposed to be funded essentially by the capital capacity, the bonding capacity freed up by the retirement of the library bonds, and then by, of course, the sale of buildings and some lease revenues and some enterprise funds.
So yes, thanks. I've passed that question along to our CFO for a response, and I'd prefer to let that response come from the CFO and leadership.
Jeff, then I have the RAD if you want me to continue with the.
Steve, maybe, I think I saw Robert.
Okay.
Maybe Robert can address that if he doesn't defer to the CFO.
No, I would absolutely defer to the CFO.
Okay.
But that was exactly, I think that was going to be exactly the comment. You know, we've got the question out there. The project is coming to the end of its financing plan. And we are trying to clarify how much additional capacity was under that original plan and the resources identified. So very much it'd be a follow-up.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Steve, why don't you 2 more for Steve, and then how about then going to Eric again?
Okay. Well, the questions I submitted are in the spreadsheet, and I wondered if staff could address them, please, on RAD 02.
Hi, Steve. This is Rod Olson. I did get these and responded back, not to you, but through the process. But I will be glad to go through these.
Well, if you have, maybe you could just tell us where we'd find the response, and we could look at it rather than save some time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any way to see the CBR or to put anything in the CBR, so I'll just go through this quickly if you want. Basically, what this comes down to, define the term interoperability. Interoperability refers to the ability to communicate with partner agency personnel on incidents and during events. So in this case, the encryption capabilities on each radio in the common programmed talk groups that share the common encryption keys are needed. This need to move toward encryption was directed after it was found that communications were being compromised by rioters and people listening to the clear communications that law enforcement was using last year. So number 2, define the encryption. Encryption on the Armor radio system is end-to-end, meaning that specific talk groups and the encryption keys need to be programmed into each radio individually so that only the radios with the capabilities in the programming can talk to and hear each other. The non-encrypted communications can be heard on scanners and scanner apps, and encrypted communications cannot be heard. So 3 was please define the difference between mobile and radio and portable. Basically, a portable radio is carried by and issued to individuals. A mobile radio is the larger and higher power radio that is hardwired into the vehicle and squad.
Okay.
4, why was the need for sufficient additional radios not addressed in RAD 01? Well, the mobile radios that we currently use are still working well. And at the time of RAD 01, they were compliant with the Armor standards. And in a sense, they actually are as far as what's needed is in the talk groups. But with the push to go to encrypted communication capabilities, and it's not just Minneapolis that's doing this, all law enforcement across the state is moving towards encrypted interoperable communications. The city decided to go to the encryption, and with that timeline to replace all the mobiles that are out in squads, it's moved up our transition plan. So we don't have that time. There's more of an urgency to get those radios updated. There's also an added cost with encryption for each radio that was not originally considered in the RAD 01 project. So the presentation asked for 2 million and 2 million, and then an unknown in the 3rd year. So the unknown 3rd year amount comes from not currently knowing the extent of what the city wants to encrypt communications to. So there's kind of 2 different ways to do that. You can encrypt the main so that it's encrypted all the time for police communications, or you can go to a transitional piece where you only use it for certain level of need. So depending upon what that is, there are support groups within the city that support law enforcement on their daily communications channels. So the unknown is how many of those need to. If this is going to be a daily thing, then all of those have to be updated to encrypted communications also. If this is going to be only for certain events and they will not be a part of it, well, then we don't have to upgrade them to an encrypted level. So the estimated for 2024 would be, and just going off of current pricing on the state contract, would be like 1.5 million to 2.2 million. So to give you an idea as to what that delta might be there. Why was the need for sufficient additional radios not addressed in RAD 01? It was that timeline. So we were planning on transitioning these as needed, just doing a little bit each year. But now with the encryption, it's being pushed forward. And
Thank you, Rod.
On number
No,
5,
please finish.
I don't know why why it didn't hit. I had submitted a Word document, and like I mentioned before, I can't change anything to CBR. I don't even get to see it, so I don't know what happened with that submission, why it didn't get up there, but I apologize for whatever happened there.
By the way, you can see those online now if you can't see it internally. So time check, everyone. I'm not trying to rush this process in any way, shape, or form. So we have additional questions from Steve and Katrina. And thank you for your diligence in submitting in advance. We have Eric in queue. Is there any objection if the group runs to finish up this segment, run till 9:40, and that'll still leave 40 minutes for Municipal Building Commission? If we can just wrap up. So let's go to Eric, and then I think we have, if staff wants to handle the written questions submitted in advance, then we'll see if there are any other people in queue. Eric?
Okay. My question is PSD 20. The city recently reported out that the total cost of PSD 20 is about $210 million. And it also recently reported out that there were, is it $37 million in cost overruns? So if I got my numbers right, or if I'm close, my question is, what types of financial safeguards have been implemented at this point to avoid such cost overruns into the future? That's a huge number, and I'm sure you're investigating how we could be off by 15%. So that's my question. What safeguards are or have been put in place to avoid this situation again?
I guess I would say I'm not prepared to answer that question right now. It's a very complex answer that involves addressing many different aspects of increased cost, and I'd like the opportunity to work with my colleagues in leadership to address it properly, and just we don't have enough time to get into that properly, I think, in this forum, but we'll definitely put together a response and share it with the committee.
Thanks,
Great.
Bob.
Yeah,
We'll just
thank you,
footnote
Bob.
that. Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Additional written questions? Justin or Robert?
Yeah, Jeff, this is Justin. I defer to those who wrote the questions, I believe.
Okay.
We got through Steve's. If Katrina has specific questions she wants to bring up with the group, she's welcome. Otherwise, we certainly can follow up with staff for written responses as well.
A written response is fine.
Oh. Okay. Well, thank you, members. Are there any further questions on the property services? Public grounds and facilities. Last call. So thank you to staff who presented on public grounds and facilities. We'll look forward to your written follow-ups. And then we'll maybe take, thank you, Bob, and other staff, and we will maybe take 1 minute just to get ready for the Municipal Building Commission.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
I think we're just taking down a few notes following the presentation from the property services team. But at this time, I do want to welcome Director Erin Delaney from the Municipal Building Commission, who's able to join us on this morning's call. Erin, welcome.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
End of April.
Exactly. End of the rain. We're on to the sunshine.
So our normal practice is sort of high level is we have the recorded sessions from all departments and agencies, and then we maybe take 5-10 minutes to do a high level overview, what you want to say, but we're not going to replay anything. And then,
okay,
you know, whatever the key points are, and then we segue into questions. And so we're scheduled till 10:20. So I think we have a fair amount of time.
Sure.
For
Okay.
MBC.
Okay.
And maybe for new members, Director, we maybe because we've had a fair number of new members appointed, that maybe just not to be redundant, but just maybe ensuring that we do a high level overview of what is the Municipal Building Commission.
Sure, sure, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. Thank you,
Thanks.
Jeff. Good morning, Click members. Again, Erin Delaney. I'm the director of the Municipal Building Commission. Our job at the MBC is to take care of the City Hall Courthouse building. The building itself is jointly owned by Hennepin County and the City of Minneapolis and has been since it was constructed in 1891. At the time of construction, there was a state law passed that said that the building would be cared for by the MBC board, that this separate legal agency would be carved out in state statute and be charged with the care and custody of the building. We're charged with space assignments for the building. Essentially, everything building specific comes through the MBC office. There are 4 board members on the MBC board. Again, this is directed by state statute, and it always includes the mayor of Minneapolis and a city council appointment, which currently and has been for several years is Councilmember Lisa Goodman. And then again, by state statute, the chair of the Hennepin County Board always serves as the chair of the MBC board. And in addition, there's a Hennepin County Commissioner appointment. And in this case, it's Commissioner Angela Conley. So there's 55 MBC total employees. We office in City Hall. Our staff is comprised of the administrative team, custodial, security, and building trades. So we're small and we're generalists. We get involved in a lot of different areas of the building. Any specific questions? Does that help, Jeff? Did I miss anything?
I think that's great. And of course, you've been willing in the past to give tours of the facility to Click members, including the clock tower and the sub basement and all the other interesting places. And I suppose someday you will again be having another recognition of the facility's age and historic nature.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We're eager to restart our tour program, and we just decided this morning too to move forward with the Caroline Bell concert. Again, that's something else that is part of the MBC. The bells that are in the 4th Street tower of the building, those come through the MBC, those concerts. So, Jeff, should I walk through my slides or just talk?
Yes. Why don't we just talk through the projects? Walk through your slides, or walk and talk through the CBRs.
Okay. Now, do you want me to share the slides or should I keep up what you guys have? What's your preference?
Your time to present to us, and there aren't any hands raised at this point.
Oh, okay. So, Robert, is it appropriate for you to relinquish and then I can pull up the slides? Is that what? Okay.
Justin Carlson has control of the presentation, but I believe we should be able to share. Justin, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to.
No, that's great, Robert. And Director Aaron, either you can request control to bring up your slides, or I can bring up individual CBRs for you, whichever you prefer.
Oh, okay. I think what I'll do is request control. And sorry if I missed that point. Okay, I wonder, shoot. I'm not seeing where it says I can request control.
It is possible, if this is considered an external account for this meeting, that might not be available. So either if you're able, I can get those slides from you and bring them up, or I can bring up the individual CB at this time.
Shoot. Why don't I quickly send you this PowerPoint? And then I can start talking through it. I can tell you that we do vacillate between city teams program and county teams program. So that may be the reason. That we're having this technical. Here, I'll put it right here. Shoot, I'm sorry. It's not letting me cut from.
You know, Director Delaney, we've, Teams, we all know from working with Teams and Zoom.
Yeah.
This past year and 2 months that it always, there always are some issues. And so if we can just have Justin bring up the CBR and we can just look at MBC01, and then if you're kind enough to share the PowerPoint with the group, we'll put it into our SharePoint.
Sure.
We're now in a SharePoint application. So
sure, absolutely. Right, absolutely. Okay, so we have the okay, mechanical life safety. Okay. We have both MBC01 is life safety and MBC02 is the mechanical program. We have worked on this program for almost 23 years. These first two projects are completed simultaneously, and they're part of a wider comprehensive building-wide project where the MBC goes into individual phases and upgrades the mechanical and the life safety features of that space. Each stage is approximately 15,000 square feet. And the really good news is that we are close to the end of this comprehensive 23-stage project. We're zeroing in on the last 4 stages. So our request, and a new piece for this request, is these last 4 stages. We're working jointly with the city of Minneapolis in the city's tenant improvement project, which means the MBC and the city have to make these changes to the City Hall courthouse building to allow for incoming city employees who are coming into City Hall as they leave other city buildings. And some departments are leaving City Hall and moving into the city's new building. So the positive piece to this is the city and the MBC are coordinating this request together to click. Questions?
Questions on MBC01 or 2?
Okay.
Not seeing any hands.
Okay. Exterior improvements has been ongoing. We have recently completed phase 2. If you've been downtown lately, you've seen a lot of scaffolding on the 5th Street side of the building. That is related to exterior improvements. Phase 3 for this project is the interior facade of the building, and we're requesting funding in 2024. So we're queuing that up in a couple more years to complete this project. I believe this is priority 7 for us, exterior improvements. Questions, concerns?
Eric, one.
Yeah, I see a question.
And
Hello.
then Amity.
Hi. Hi, I may be looking at this wrong, but I don't see any requests in 2024. I see 2022 is the last year for funding.
Okay. Exterior improvements. We have a request for $7.3 million in 2024 to start phase 3 of this project.
And this is MBC 01?
10.
Yes, 10. This is
10.
exterior improvements.
Okay. Sorry, that I got that wrong. Thank you. Got it.
You're welcome.
Amity.
Yeah, I just have a question. What does interior facade mean?
Okay, the city, that's a great question. Thank you. The City Hall Courthouse building is actually a donut in the sense that the inside of our building is hollow. There's a courtyard, there's a green roof, there's a mezzanine level, but there is walls and roofs on the interior of our building that you actually can't see from the exterior. Again, I'd love to have you come on site and you can see it from interior windows. You can see the interior courtyard of the building, and that's the exterior repairs we need to make to the interior of the building.
Good. John, and then Eric.
Thanks. Yeah, so I have a funding question that relates to 3 of your 5 projects, MBC 1, 2, and 10.
Okay.
And I'm going to just give folks a little bit of background before I dive into this. So MBC has had a history with us going back a long way before the current employee or staff that are presenting today of not being the best about doing long-range planning in terms of the requests that they make one year changing pretty dramatically sometimes from year to year. And to be fair, part of that has nothing to do with poor planning on the part of the people involved. It has to do with what NBC is tasked with doing, which is maintaining a really old building that sometimes is full of surprises when you start opening up walls or when something falls that nobody expected to fall or whatever it is. So I think that's important to note that in this case, but at the same time, it does feel like sometimes some of the changes in planning that happen are not always related to that. And so my question, and I think I've read these right, if I go back and look at your requests last year for MBC 1, 2, and 10, you made pretty large requests in 2021 for money in 2021, and that's the only request you made. And now you're coming back this year and you're making, again, fairly large requests for those same 3 projects in 2022 that you didn't ask for back in 2021.
John, I think you raise a good question. Thank you. Another part to this is the partnership now that I talked about that we have with the city for MBC 01 and MBC 02. That really pushed it as a priority for us. So we had to significantly increase the funding for that. And quite frankly, the workload.
So on all 3 of those projects, 1, 2, and 10, you're not asking for money beyond next year. Does that mean we won't see these projects after this year?
No, John, let's start with 10, exterior improvements. I moved that out to 2024, a request in 2024, because I have a capacity issue. I need to focus on 01 and 02. And you're right, we upped the increase for 01 and 02. And yes, it is our plan with the city that we will not be back after 2023 for money. That our final request is 2022 for mechanical and life safety. That is our request. And again, members of CLIC, that is coordinated with the city of Minneapolis very closely. So it's our hope that we finish everything up next year and that we're not back, John.
Thank you. And then again on NBC 10, yeah, thank you for that correction. It's that you're requesting 2024. Is that the last year we're going to see that one as far as you know?
Well, it's a large request, right? It's about $7 million for 2024. I'm not willing to commit to that yet. There's a lot of work in the interior. So I can't commit to that. I know I don't think we put anything out in 2025, did we?
No.
No. Mm-mm.
So, but I'm wondering whether you should be.
I know.
This has been the ongoing problem with NBC,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we
Yeah.
need better planning from you guys. If you have a sense that the 7 million is not going to cover it in 2024, there ought to be a request in out years.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point, John. You know, I'm also just going to say it's also a capacity issue for administration. You know, that the planning and the timing is very important. It's something we struggle with, trying to balance everything else that we have going on. So I hear what you're saying, John, and you raise a good point, and we need to improve on it.
And I'll just say I understand the capacity issue, but I would say better to ask for the money in 2025, and then when we get closer, say, you know what, we've got a capacity issue. Can we push that back to 26? That's easier than the opposite.
You're right. I know. You're right. It is.
Thank you.
It is.
Appreciate
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, John. And Steve is next.
Thank you. Aaron, I'd like to ask you about a question that's been on NBC's list in the past. It isn't this year, and that's the mayor's reception room. Obviously, that's been viewed as a frill in comparison to all these very basic building maintenance needs. And now is not a good time to take on a project like that with both the city and the county in an austerity mode. But I wanted to ask whether that project is dead, whether you see any outside funding possibilities for it, or use of revenue from the rental of the building once we get back to renting buildings for functions, or is it gone for good?
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that question. No, the project is not gone, if you will. It is part of phase 2 of the existing mechanical life safety work we're doing. The level of historic restoration preservation has been scaled back significantly. The building or the room itself we won't certainly harm any of the historic aspects. We spent some time on paint colors and carpeting to replicate the historic charm of that room. We also intend to use some historic pieces that we found in the building to decorate in that room to try to keep the charm. It will be an active, usable conference room for the City Hall Courthouse building. And folks, this room we're talking about is it's on the first floor. As you walk in on 5th Street, you go to your left, and the conference room is right there. And it will be adjoined to the Minneapolis Fire Department. Will now be in that corner of the building. John, the other piece to your comment is the catering and events program. Yes, the events program has been on hiatus. You know, now we're on 13 months of a hiatus. We intend and want to reinvigorate that program when it's safe and productive. We do have Historic Preservation Fund money as a result of that program. Members of CLIC, any proceeds from that program are deposited in a specific account for historic restoration. And it's our intent to continue with that, Steve, as well. So fingers crossed. We're working on some ideas for the board to look at this summer on implementing a new catering and events program. Did I answer?
Steve? Sorry, Aaron, didn't mean to butt in.
No. I just want to make sure I answered all your questions, Steve.
Yes. You did. And so since I put myself in queue, since you mentioned events, is the NBC an eligible entity for the shuttered events, blah, 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 federal program out of probably the American Rescue Plan Act? And then secondly, I do have another question is, this is totally apolitical. It could be any major political party, but as you know, this year precinct caucuses in some parties are virtual still because we're coming out of COVID with vaccinations, but 2022 again will be a major election year statewide, and precinct caucuses are in statute. And as a person who has worked on organizing those and getting spaces in downtown spaces are difficult to find. And so, and there is a law that says that public facilities have to give the political parties the lowest rate given to anyone. And so is there space in the municipal building? And I would ask the same thing for the new public service building for the community, for the major parties to get space for these political precinct caucuses that residents gather for in 2022.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll start with your first question, and that is if the MBC is eligible for any financial programming due to shuttered events. We are researching that. I have asked the county attorney's office to assist me in that to see if we're eligible and or it's appropriate for us to pursue any of that programming. We have not to date, Jeff, found a program that is appropriate for the MBC to apply for. The second piece is I am always available for more conversations about making the space available to members of the public. I'm intrigued by that. I have not had that request before about precinct caucuses and what the layout would involve and all, but I'd be happy to talk with you further about that. Yeah, I mean, we want to show off the building. We want people in there. And so I think maybe we can talk about that. And again, that would be open to any event that's interested in needs public space. Yeah.
Thanks. All right. So unless there's other hands, I guess you can move on to MBC 12, 13, 15, 16.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, MBC 12 is life safety, facility safety improvements, non-stage work. This is, again, life safety improvements in the building that are not in those assigned stages that I referenced earlier. The areas in this project are non-assigned areas, such as the rotunda, hallways, staircases, the attic. The work included in this project is life safety work as installing the sprinkler system, smoke barriers, all types of fireproofing, building signage, all life safety work in public areas of the building. And I'm just going to pause right now to see if there's any questions. Again, this is priority number 3 for the MBC because of the life safety component.
John has his hand raised.
Hi, thanks. I don't know if this is a question for Aaron or Robert. This is more of how this is showing up on the CVRs. I just want to confirm that I'm reading this correctly, and this, especially for some of the new members, it's not totally clear. If you look under funding, and this applies to all of the MBC projects, I think it's already been mentioned that the city pays 50% on these projects and the county pays the other 50%. I believe what we're seeing on the CBRs is the full cost of these. And in fact, the city's only got half of that. And that would be what's listed as bond activity is the city, and what's listed as intergovernmental revenues is the county. And so what you see for the total is the full cost, but the city's only in for half of that. Am I reading that accurately?
John, that's right. This is Robert.
Okay. So when Aaron said, back on the project we were talking about a few minutes ago, MBC 10, when she says 7 million, the city piece of that is half of that.
For John, was that for exterior improvements?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, my request to click for exterior improvements in 2024 is 3.6 million for the city. Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on MBC 12? Currently not.
Okay.
MBC 13.
Okay, great. This is the one I'm excited about the most, members of Click. This is the 4th Street reconstruction. We want to make some upgrades to the 4th Street entrance, the public sidewalk in front of the 4th Street entrance of the building. At the same time that the city's coming through the corridor and replacing 4th Street. We asked for money last year and we didn't receive any money from the city. We did, however, receive funding from Hennepin County for this work. We can't access the county money unless the city matches the county's funding. Specifically, we're looking at installing additional security cameras, benches, and bollards, again, along the 4th Street entrance of the building. The sidewalk itself will be widened as the city redesigns the 4th Street corridor. The result is a wider sidewalk on the 4th Street side of City Hall. So that's why we want to take an opportunity during this work to make these upgrades to the sidewalk area. The Click request is $150,000. And again, the county has already committed to that $150,000. So the total project cost we're asking for is $300,000. So I am hopeful that members of Click will see the value of this request. I see some hands. John, is your hand still up?
Yeah, John, Eric, and Katrina.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I don't have a question. That's from before. I'll lower it.
Okay. Okay.
Eric, and then Katrina.
Okay.
Okay. This has to do with all of NBC. I'm not seeing very much in the way of investment in security systems. I'm speaking of things like metal detectors, things that you would typically find in a government facility elsewhere in the country. Are you feeling safe enough to not have that type of equipment in these buildings?
Mm-hmm. You know, Eric, I'm going to take a step back and say it's our goal, obviously, to provide a safe environment for all employees and members of the public. It is a broader policy discussion that is ongoing with the City of Minneapolis leadership and Hennepin County leadership as to whether some type of detection is appropriate for City Hall. We are at the table with those discussions, Eric. So I think we'll hear more about that work as we move forward.
Okay, and would those come in as operating costs or would it come in as capital costs into the future? So we know if we're expecting to see anything.
Right. You know, I think there could be both. I think you're with the investment like that, I would see some capital expenditures required. And then the operating associated with it, the staffing, the labor involved. Yes, I could see both in that type of request.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Eric. We have Katrina and then Katie.
Hi. So my big question, well, I've had a couple of, but the big question is on this 4th Street entrance, you know, because I look at it in this plan or in this drawing, that if the kind of art in public places could be integrated into seeing this, it would be a much more attractive presentation if instead of just the concrete bollards, we actually had maybe concrete sculptures, and instead of just the concrete benches, things like that, especially in this entrance, would really be a motivating factor, because it could also integrate that whole art in public places. Sounds a little frivolous, but when you can spend money on art at the same time for security, it just enhances it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great point. Thank you. I think you submitted that similar question, so thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And Katrina, that'd be just a kind of a footnote to note that that's a perfect type of comment to consider for the task force. Katie and then Steve Brandt.
Hi, yes, this is actually to comment on what Eric was saying, or to provide some context. So I worked in City Hall for a number of years and had learned that the reason why City Hall doesn't have, or so our City Hall does not have metal detectors and such things compared to that in St. Paul and compared to the Hennepin County Government Center, is that we don't have courts within our City Hall building. So that's one of the reasons behind that.
Any response or that question or?
Katie, thank you. There's lots of different issues to address with detection. And there is, again, a current work team put together to talk about those exact issues.
Thank you. Steve, and then Eric.
Okay.
I have a question about the 4th Street project, but I do want to maybe preface it with a comment. City Hall near the 4th Street entrance has the sheriff's office right around the corner. Near the 5th Street entrance, it has the police department headquarters right around the corner. So it's not like there's no security there at all. And I would like to ask Aaron, with a wider sidewalk, which I generally support, we also have the issue of police cars perennially parked, double parked, and maybe even triple parked in front of the 4th Street side. And I'm just worried, I just wondered the extent to which traffic flow has been analyzed, because it seems like it would have the potential to neck down that section of 4th, which is maybe good from a traffic calming standpoint, but not necessarily good from a traffic flow standpoint.
Steve, again, I truly appreciate that question, because it is a problem around City Hall enforcement, vehicles parked, double parked. I know that the city Public Works Department has diligently worked on this replacement corridor project, and has taken that into consideration. It's my understanding that the 4th Street will now go down to 2 lanes total, one going one way, the other going the other way, obviously. There will be a bike lane, not in front of City Hall, but rather on the northeast side of the street. Then in front of City Hall, directly in front of City Hall, the plan at this point is to have a parking bay, and then the extended width of the sidewalk. And some of those questions our colleagues in City Public Works could answer very thoroughly for you.
Okay. I'm given even more pause by your answer, because if there's only one lane headed toward a freeway entrance, that seems a little insufficient, as well as, of course, taking into account that there are often large crowds in normal times at the stadium.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But
Thank
please,
you, Steve.
Yeah, no, Steve, please follow up with Public Works. I know they've done numerous traffic studies, and traffic really winds off at 2nd Avenue, they say, before it gets to City Hall. So, but those are the experts. Those folks can answer your questions.
Thank you.
Okay, well, will staff help us footnote that as a question to transportation?
Sure.
Eric?
Yeah, at one point, the sheriff's office used that building for jailing, for the holding of people. Are they still doing it there? And if not, has that been moved to the new public service building? Because that would certainly be a reason for security to be enhanced in the building.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Eric. The building, and I remiss, I should have mentioned this. The building still contains a 504 bed jail. It absolutely does. The City Hall Courthouse. Now, the intake of residents into the jail does occur in the new facility across 4th Avenue from us. That's where all intake occurs. But the jail itself is in our building.
Okay, well, thank you. Instead of residents, I like to think of them as visitors.
Visitors, okay, yeah.
Well,
I don't, you know.
that helps.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
All right. Time check. 10:12. So we perhaps should cover the NBC 15 and 16.
Okay. NBC 16, this is a new project, members of CLIC. We are looking for some design, well, 518,000 from CLIC for 2022. This is a new project to upgrade the 3 electrical systems in the building. This project is new again, and what it started it was some electrical work we had to do in the ADC, that's the jail in our building, that morphed into a building-wide electrical upgrade when it became clear that some of our systems were more outdated than had been originally aware, than we had originally been aware of. So this is a large comprehensive project, building-wide, again, electrical upgrades, panel boards, circuits, conductors. A lot of the equipment is beyond life expectancy. And we need to bring the building up to be in compliant with the National Electrical Code.
Thank you. Questions on NBC 16? We can come back to it then. NBC 50. All right, John has his hand raised.
Okay.
Thanks. So this is a question that applies to several of these projects, but 16 would be part of it. I'm wondering if timing of money of the request is any more time sensitive than usual as a result of people being moved around with the new building opening and other buildings closing, et cetera. Or not?
You know, John, interesting question. I don't believe that has a big big input on this project. Again, what started this was more some work we were doing in electrical upgrades in the ADC.
And does that question apply any differently to the life safety improvements or to 1 or 2?
No, I don't think the moving around of our tenants and employees specifically doesn't impact the scope of the project. It does impact the timing of the mechanical and the life safety.
That's what I mean.
The timing of it. Okay. Well, for sure then with the mechanical and the life safety, because we've got to get in and make these repairs before the city brings in the new departments into the building.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes a lot of your requests are large, and sometimes we have to shift things around to get everything to work. But that might be a problem if the city's got plans to get people moved in. So that's
absolutely
why
right. And that, again, John, that's why NBC 01 and 02, our first 2 priorities, and we're telling CLIC and we're telling CBTF as well, the county equivalent, that we need this funding to stay current with the city's work. So, point taken.
Thank you. Jeff, is it in order for me to ask a question on NBC 15 or should I wait?
Yeah, that was, I think, the last one we need to cover. So
yeah, The
Why
new
don't you,
elevator.
yeah, why don't, John can preface it and he can put his question out there and then we can review it and address it.
So this is sort of a broader question for, again, for folks that are new. This is not the first request for money to upgrade elevators in the building. There used to be a project called MBC 11 that dealt with a bunch of the elevators in the building. So my question to you is this the last elevator that needs to be upgraded? And if not, instead of having a project that's specific to one elevator, could you either resurrect the old MBC 11 or add into MBC 15 all future elevators that may need to be upgraded?
Sure. Yes. Yes. And I hope, John, you get a chance to see the slides I presented, because that's one of the first sentences I say is that this is one of the last elevators that we believe we need to work on at this point. It's the last elevator of the modernization program. And you referred to that program as MBC 11. You know, the change from a comprehensive program to include all elevators was driven by the capital funding staff to say, okay, wait, now we want you to separate out all these elevators as opposed to one elevator project, which is fine. It's just a different way of presenting the work. I will say that this final elevator, number 12, was located previously in city space. And now that department has moved out, property and evidence, this elevator 12 now becomes available for building-wide use as opposed to department-specific use. This is in the southwest corner of the building, this elevator. So it's new to us as a building-wide elevator. So now we've got to work on getting funding to modernize it and make it, bring it up to code.
So I did see the presentation, but the way it's worded, it's into the way you just said it, it's not totally clear. Again, so this was an elevator that you were aware of that for a series of reasons wasn't one that was being contemplated for modernization, and then a change occurred that changed that. So my question is, are there any other elevators, useful or not useful, in the building that are not up to, that could potentially need to be upgraded if some change occurred in the future?
I would say no, that there are not additional elevators. Now, you know, there's 13 total elevators. So if something, it's been now, what, 15, 17 years since we've done the interior court elevators. So, you know, like everything, the shift keeps going around. But no, at this point, after this elevator, then we've got 2 elevators in the ADC that we're working on. But the city is not responsible for that funding. So we, the MBC, will continue with elevator work, but this is the last one that will be scheduled through Click.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Well, we are at 10:20, perfect timing. I know I'll have to ask if there are any additional questions on the Municipal Building Commission program. And not seeing anything, I'll thank Director Delaney on presentation. We'll look forward to getting your slide set. Okay, good. And looking forward to, when it's safe to do so, having the building tours.
Right, absolutely.
And, you know, and it's great to learn that you have these exciting, beautiful conference rooms available.
Yes.
For volunteer advisory committees like Click, so they don't have to meet in these interior windowless rooms.
Absolutely.
For their task force meetings when those resume.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for participating and presenting.
My pleasure. Please connect if questions come up. Please connect anytime. Thank
Great.
you. Thank you.
So, thank you.
All right.
So Click members, we're scheduled for a 10-minute break. So in fairness, we'll resume at 10:31. Hello, Robert. Should we be ready to resume?
Hello. Yes, it looks
Okay.
like we have, just want to check and make sure. Oh, looks like Mary Altman is here with us from CPED, Community Planning and Economic Development. Mary, I just want to welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Welcome, Mary. So we'll start with Art 01, Art in Public Places from the CPED department, and then after that we'll move to the Park Board, and it was noted that Adam Arvidsson is here as well. Welcome, Mary.
Good morning. Chair Strand, I received some questions in writing yesterday, and I could start by addressing those if you want me to.
That's perfectly fine, unless you had, typically we do have the presenters maybe have a 5-minute overview or about the program, just especially helping new members.
Great. I'll open my presentation and just share my screen. Actually, that might actually be also a good way for me to address some of those questions at the same time. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Good. So the Art in Public Places program has been around for a long time, between 30 and 40 years. And within the last 5 years, the City Council actually approved an ordinance funding art in public places to a minimum level of 1.5% of the net debt bond. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about art in public places and how it differs from the city's other arts programs. So because I did get some questions yesterday that were really great and very passionate and about the arts. And I think sometimes it's not clear. The city's arts programming in general isn't very clear to the general public. So Art in Public Places is the city's public art program that commissions permanent works of art. This is just one of the city's arts programs. The city has other arts programs out of the city coordinator's office, in the Office of Arts, Culture, and the Creative Economy. The public art program involves commissions of permanent artworks. It also involves other activities like the maintenance of those artworks. We permit works of art on city property. We regularly do policy updates, and we partner with groups like MnDOT and Hennepin County and other government entities on their public art projects. Because the source of funding is the net debt bond, we are required to do permanent works of art with these through Art in Public Places. And that means that the artworks need to have a lifespan that is longer than the time that it takes to pay the bonds off. Generally, our goal is to have artworks with a minimum lifespan of 25 years. So I just wanted to touch on that. I won't do the whole presentation, but I will talk a little bit about how it works. Generally, a public art process from beginning to end can take approximately 3 years. It starts with a planning process, and there is a community-based steering committee, and the staff and the steering committee do some research related to the project. Oftentimes, they do some initial community engagement, and then they conduct an artist selection process, and we do a call for artists. And an independent selection panel picks the artists. Then the selected artist works with the steering committee to do further engagement. And the engagement for each project is tailored to that community, to their needs, and to the site. So we do a broad range of community engagement, but it really varies from project to project. And the community and the steering committee give the artist input on the design as it develops. Once the design is cooked, so to speak, it goes through some technical reviews, but the designs are reviewed by an art conservator to make sure that that the design is something that we can maintain. And then the design is approved by both the city's Public Art Advisory Panel and the Arts Commission. Then the fabrication takes place, and the artist might fabricate the artwork, or the artwork might be fabricated by others, or both, depending on the project and also on the artist's preferences. The steering committee and staff do studio visits during this time to kick the tires and to see the progress. And then the artwork is installed on site. And then finally, we have a celebration. And then the artwork becomes part of the city's permanent collection. And the city maintains that artwork. And we have a number of educational materials about the artwork out. We have materials on our website. We have a plaque on site. And we have an interactive map that I believe that you have the link to of all of the artworks, actually 8 interactive maps of all of the artworks in the city's collection, which folks can come and tour. So this is just a slide that shows a little bit about the process from engagement. This year we used a lot of lawn signs on site for engagement. We did a lot of social distanced engagement. We did a lot of Zoom engagement, but you can also see some of the artist design concepts. These are the artist design concepts for an artwork along the Green Crescent, and this is by Javier and Tina Tavera. I just want to say a little bit about our work on equity. We focus a lot on equity issues related to this, both in terms of working with the artists and in terms of working with the community. We have spent a lot of time and effort and had a lot of special projects over the last 10 years that are really focused on developing the capacity of emerging artists to do public art projects. We've had projects that have focused on emerging artists and provided training, additional training to artists, as well as coaching and additional staff support and staff time. Currently, over half of the artists under contract are artists of color or Indigenous folks, and usually it's more than half. We also really focus a lot on equity in our engagement, making sure that our engagement activities are accessible to a broad range of people, targeting different groups with different types of activities, making sure we have a range of engagement activities, from in-person kinds of activities, engagement where we, stop people on the street and talk to them. And we do some traditional meetings, but we really try to move beyond that. And artists are so creative these days in terms of what they were doing with engagement, especially during COVID. They've just done some fantastic stuff, and I think we've learned about how to even be more creative in engagement during the last year. I just also want to highlight a new project that we have going on. It's called the 2021 project. We have engaged 4 artists in collaborating with the Park Board, Property Services, and Public Works to really understand their CIP or their CBRs and their capital improvement programs, and they are identifying sites within the capital improvement program that are potential future public art sites. Then they're going to do a lot of community engagement and get the community's input on where they would really like us to be doing community or public art over the next several years. And they will be bringing, these artists and the departments will be collectively bringing projects to the Arts Commission and the Public Art Advisory Panel for consideration for approximately 6 to 8 new projects this September. I think that's my 5 minutes. So would you like me, Chair Strand, would you like me to then move to the written questions I got yesterday?
Yeah, why don't we do those and then we'll go to Eric.
Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So as I said, I received some really great questions yesterday. And so one of the things I wanted to clarify, a number of the questions really related to general city arts activities and not the Art in Public Places program, which is the commissioning program that commissions permanent works of art for the city. And so I wanted to clarify that in my opening remarks and the difference between art and public places and other things that we do. In terms of the questions I got yesterday, I'm going to focus most of my answers as they relate to art and public places, but I also have put together a written document that answers the questions that relate more directly to other city arts efforts going on. And I just also wanted to say that the City Council is currently considering consolidating all art staff into one department and increasing funding to the arts and to the public art, increasing public art staff. They have a public hearing about the ordinance to create this department at the end of May. So the person who asked these questions of me yesterday wants more information about that effort. I can help them connect to the staff that are organizing that work and make sure that they can get their comments to the City Council about their ideas for increasing arts and culture activities in the city. So the question I got yesterday was related to the city goal of Minneapolis is a growing and vibrant world-class city with a flourishing economy and a pristine environment where all people are safe, healthy, and have equitable opportunities for success and happiness. And the person said to me, to achieve this reference statement, there needs to be a lot more money budgeted for art in public places. Having lots of artistic expression in lots of places spread around the city will create what some already think we have. And so I think I've already said this, but as I just explained, there's more money for the arts in the city budget than just the art in public places budget. The council is considering this ordinance to create a department with increased funding. I just also want to point out that the current ordinance for art in public places states that the city will allocate a minimum of 1.5% of the net debt bond. CLIC can allocate more if CLIC wants to. The mayor can also allocate more, and the council can allocate more, as you know. Personally, for 2022, I think we have more than adequate funding because we do have a pretty strong unspent balance, and so and that's because we have been doing a lot of work on the new public service building. We haven't had an increase in staff in order to accomplish that work, and so we're behind. But we have completed most of the work at the public service building, and so we really will be focusing in the next year on getting all of these dollars committed to new projects. So I think for 2022, we're actually doing pretty good. Of course, you can always increase it beyond 2022 if you want. Let's see. I also had a question about where our futures projects going, and I just talked about the 2021 project and artists identifying future projects within the city's CIP. In order for a project to be eligible to be a public art site, it needs to be in the CIP. The person also asked specifically about some sites, including the Dowling Bridge. We actually have artists working from Juxtaposition Arts right now, looking at the Upper Harbor and identifying public art opportunities in the Upper Harbor project, including the Dowling Bridge. I'm pretty sure that the Upper Harbor will be a public art site at some time, just like I'm pretty sure the Kmart site will be a public art site sometime. These are some of the city's biggest investments and most highly visible projects, and so they will likely be selected for public art. Let's see. One question was, the current approach seems very traditional in a couple of ways, looking at art as a collections description, most of the money being spent for very tangible things that are traditionally valued as monetary assets rather than a strengthening community asset. I just want to highlight that, again, we are limited to doing permanent works through these dollars, the net debt bond dollars. And I recognize that the word collection is a traditional term. We use it to refer to the artworks that the city owns, and the city owns 90 artworks right now that the city has commissioned over the years and that we are responsible for. These are not really monetary assets, and in fact, they're probably technically financial liabilities in that the cost of maintaining the artwork and commissioning the artwork is considerably higher than the value we would get if we tried to sell any of these artworks. And most of these artworks are unsellable anyways because of the scale and the fact that it would be hard to get anybody to want to take on an artworks as the same size as these works. And so I think the reason the city really invests in these artworks over time and continues to maintain them is because the city feels strongly that these are community assets, and so beyond monetary assets. So let's see. The next question is related to the fact that there are no projects in North Minneapolis currently, and that is true. And actually, that's kind of an anomaly. We usually have projects in North Minneapolis. We dedicated 3 works in 2019. As I said, we're working with Juxta right now in the Upper Harbor, which is actually in North Minneapolis, but that project is not funded through Art in Public Places, so it's not on the Art in Public Places map. And I think of the 6 to 8 new sites that are going to be selected in late summer by the Public Art Advisory Panel and the Arts Commission. I think at least one of those will be in North Minneapolis. I wouldn't be surprised if more than one, or even maybe more than 2 out of those are in North Minneapolis. It's pretty common for us to have works in North Minneapolis. And then finally, the last question I wasn't quite sure. It is, how can we artify neighborhoods using public projects? And so I think I need to understand a little bit more about that question before I can use it or answer it. So that's the end of the questions that I received yesterday.
So we can go to Eric and then Katrina, and then why don't we have the person follow up on the how do we artify neighborhoods? So Eric and Katrina.
Hi, Mary. Thank you for your presentation. A question, I'd like to dig a little deeper into the Upper Harbor Terminal for a moment. So your development cycle is, you mentioned 3 years, typically. And so in order to synchronize with what is planned for the Upper Harbor Terminal, if you wait for the development to be completed before working on art, you're going to be out there maybe 7 or 8 years in terms of delivering art. Is there the option for you to be working with the architects so that there is some conceptual harmony between the art that you're going to be delivering with the concept of whatever they're building down there?
Thank you for the question. That's actually our goal, is to select a project early enough to work with the architects and designers. And one of the things we really have been doing is watching the timeline for Upper Harbor, and there are several different opportunities for Upper Harbor in terms of collaboration. There's the current infrastructure project that is underway, and that's actually what Juxtaposition is working on. They are collaborating with Stantec, the firm that is designing the infrastructure, to figure out what types of artworks can be integrated into what's getting built. And that's likely paving or possibly a railing for the Dowling Bridge. The Park Board also has work happening at Upper Harbor, and we could select artists to work and collaborate with the designers of those projects. In terms of the development itself, I think we as a city expect the developer to come to the table with some public art projects and not use city funds directly for that kind of work. And then I think this will also be a site where there might be an opportunity to do works that are not necessarily integrated into what's getting built, but some pieces that are standalone pieces that might be gateways, so to speak. So looking at the timeline and how that works, and whether or not one of the projects that's selected this fall is actually the Upper Harbor is to be determined. But we've been monitoring the timing and trying to make sure we get in the door at the right time. It hasn't been selected for a project yet because the panel was concerned last year that the infrastructure is going in first, right? So if we build a lot of art out there with the infrastructure. The art's going to be out there all by itself. There's not going to be any buildings. There's not really going to be an audience yet. So they didn't want to put the art in too early, but we're aware of the timing issues, and I think it's going to be really hard for Upper Harbor to not get picked. It's such an important opportunity.
Great, thank you. And I look forward to your tours again. Those are always enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Katrina?
Hi, Mary. Thanks for your explanations. And one of the things I wanted to ask, I used to live in a large city that no matter where you went in front of every building, there were sculptures and permanent art. And it made the city just appear more approachable and fun. And is there a value of like the more permanent sculptures you have, the higher the city's valued? You know what I mean? As far as like if you went downtown and in front of every building there is a permanent piece of art, do they kind of play on each other and create a value?
I think that there is there's a general belief that public art can really be a destination, and when there are places where there are clusters of public artworks that people can walk to and that really help support the vibrancy of a community, that it does draw visitors and add to one of those. It can be one of those benefits that really can make a place a vibrant place that people want to visit and live where they want to live too. And so, that's why, for example, the city invested a lot of funds over the last 50 years in putting public art on Nicollet Mall. We are clearly behind some of the larger cities who have had percent for art ordinances since the 80s. Our percent for art ordinance is still in its infancy, even though we've been doing some public art for a while. The city's new public service building, has a huge emphasis on public art, and partly that is to make it a welcoming building for the community to be to come to and visit. Clearly, public art can play that role in other places in the city, and I think there's a real desire by the city council and other departments to have public art infused more into the city's cultural corridors.
Great. So the artified neighborhoods. So what, for instance, if you took an intersection and it somehow connected, or this is just like connected all of the corners together in a neighborhood in a permanent collection, kind of like on Nicollet Mall, where all of this, all of the art connects to each other. That's what I mean by artified, because then the neighborhoods become more, and things like that are just interesting. And I'm the one that thinks you need a lot more money.
Well, you can advocate for that on Click. That's fine with me.
Okay. Just as long as it's fine with you.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Do we have additional questions on art in public places? I don't see any others, but I'll put my hand in queue. So Mary, where would one go to look at the sort of the entirety of the city? Let's say that since I live in Shingle Creek and we have a public infrastructure stormwater detention pond that is highly used by families, residents, baby strollers, people walking, biking, skating, you name it. It's been a fabulous addition. We have a lot of linear park space in Ward 4. And but when we think about our art inventory, you know, there's a plaque on the Humboldt Greenway. There's the Camden statue in Weber Park. There's the Gateway down by the 42nd Avenue Bridge. But I'm scratching my head to try to think about others compared to other. I think I've lived in 8 neighborhoods in the city in my 40 years here. So where would one go for that sort of comprehensive inventory?
Well, so first of all, we have an interactive map, which is actually 8 interactive maps on the website. I think there's a link to it in Art 01, but I can also put it in the chat. Of all of the Art in Public Places works and all of the artworks on Park Board property. And so you can bike these maps, you can walk them, you can drive them. The maps actually even give you the number of minutes it would take to do any of those. And then they have information on all of the artworks. So that's where you can learn about them. Also, though, if there are infrastructure projects in your neighborhood or your ward that you think are good candidates for public art sites, you know, projects that are currently in the CIP, send them to me, because these artists are going to be looking at the CIP and trying to figure out where we should be doing public art, and I can highlight those projects and let the artists know about them. Now, it's generally true that the outskirts of the city have fewer works of public art than the core part of the city, and that's partly because our projects are integrated into what's getting built into the CIP, and the infrastructure in the outskirts of the city tends to be newer, but you know, it's catching up that the outlying areas need maintenance and repair and reconstruction, and so I think that's going to change.
Okay, Dan. Dan.
Hi, Mary, or Miss Altman. I use the online map system regularly to just check things out and confirm information. And I seem to recall that there's the city site and then there's a park board site. And they don't link, if I recall correctly. In other words, you can find they somewhat overlap, but they're separate systems. Are you aware of that, or?
I think you might not be using our map then, because our map is a map of all of the artworks that the city owns and that the park board owns.
Very good. It could be that I'm looking at something on the park board site that misses the city, and they don't necessarily link up as easily as you could. So if you forget where you're at, you're liable to pull up the wrong site. I just want to let you know that.
Okay, so I'm going to put the link in the chat to where the map is, and it's one map, but there's actually 8 tours within the map.
Yeah.
Because there's so many artworks that, you know, there's a northern map, there's a map of north, there's a map of east, there's a map, 3 maps in South Minneapolis, there's a map just of Nicollet Mall. So, but you can, and you can look at that on your phone and follow along as you bike. Not that I'm recommending that you be on your phone while you're biking.
Very good. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mary.
If you scroll down, you'll see the actual map right there. Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And so each of those dots on the left-hand side in that gray bar is a different map. See, north.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we add to that every single time. We haven't put the new public service building on it yet, because we actually have to have a map made of the interior of the building in order to map those works. But yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Mary. Did you want to have any concluding remarks? Otherwise, I'm not seeing any other questions, and we thank you for presenting and all the details. And after you conclude, we'll move on to the Park and Recreation Board.
So I just really want to thank Click for their service. you know, this is one of the boards and commissions that has like a heavy lift. This is a lot of material to get through. These are really super important decisions to the city. And I really, as a city staff person, appreciate your dedication to this work and the impact it has on the city budget every year. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks a lot, Mary. Or Ms. Altman. But thank you for presenting again, and we'll look forward to any follow-up and working through the CBRs.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
I will be sending those the written response to the questions I got yesterday to finance staff so they can share it with you.
Great.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, draw members' attention to the link in the chat. I wanted to mention previously, so we don't overlook it for the public, Amelia had posted at 9:12 a link to the council discussion from the POGO committee, the Policy and Government Oversight Committee, just so that we document that chat item. Robert, would you like to queue us up for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board?
Yes, it looks like we have on the call Adam Arvidsson with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. I just want to extend a welcome to Adam to this year's CLIC presentations, or Q&A. Really, it is. And Adam, we've been introducing folks and welcoming them and giving them an opportunity, I think, to give a high-level overview of what it is they do, especially for newer CLIC members, as well as the types of proposals that we have here. We also have a few questions that were submitted in advance that we can spool up. At this point, I do just want to again extend that welcome, Adam, to the meeting.
Thank you, Robert. Hi, everyone. Hello, Chair Strand. Should I just go ahead and proceed?
Yes, please do.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And I just want to echo at the top what Mary said. Obviously, there's some familiar names here in the room that I've been conversing with for many years now. And I always say that the conversation that I have with CLIC is some of the most fair and challenging questions that I get from any committee that I go in front of. And in the past, the items that you have raised for the park board have directly led to changes in our practices in terms of how we do our own capital improvement program. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your continued service, and to welcome new members to the group as well. It's hard to follow Mary Altman, but obviously there was a lot of talk about parks and integration. We're very excited about the new public art system. You saw on there that there's going to be somebody dedicated to us and thinking about how do we incorporate public art into capital improvement projects. So there's a pretty good linkage here, because all of the projects that we submitted are potential places where that public art funding could be spent in all of these parks. So I'm going to do a very quick overview. Is it okay if I share content and show off just a couple of slides to set the context?
Absolutely. Adam, if you're able to request control, that would be great.
Okay, I've just done so. See if this works for you all. Can everyone see a screen here that begins with the word projects on top, large ongoing projects?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I just want to go quickly through the different projects, because for the newcomers to the group, this is a little bit different than maybe how some of the other ones work. So I just want to note that the park board has two different types of projects. One of these are our large ongoing projects, and we have 5 different PRK code numbers for those. The PRK CP project really looks at all the major implementation projects under the NPP 20 funding agreement. as long as investment in an individual park is $1.1 million or less. And so in the Park CP project, we're proposing projects in 31 parks, plus an additional 6 or 7 in the 2027 year, which have not been determined yet. The Park RP is all of our parks rehabilitation project. And those are the ones in the 10 different categories that have to do with taking care of existing assets like building HVAC systems and roofs and sidewalks and things like that. And then there are 3 kind of amenity specific projects. One has to do with playgrounds, and then there's a shelter, pool, site improvements program, and an athletic fields program. The latter of these 2 are sort of phasing out as we roll these kinds of projects into the Park CP project. But this year, we're looking at 19 playground projects in 19 parks, and then 1 each in the other 2. I just want to show the map. These are the Park CP projects, which are those kind of larger implementation projects. And this is a map that really shows how our CIP is being driven by our equity metrics that were adopted along with NPP 20. And you can see many of these projects do cluster in the north side of Minneapolis and the upper south, especially even this this interesting area kind of along 35W. And then we're starting to move over into northeast Minneapolis as we move through those equity rankings. And then additionally, we have single park projects, and there are 9 of these this year. These are projects where the budget exceeds $1.1 million. And so on the advice of Click several years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, we began to split these projects out so they could be considered individually. These are our largest implementation projects. And as you can see from the list here, there are 9 of these this year. Again, these parks are all selected through the equity metric that we developed alongside NPP 20. And so the inclusion of these particular parks, for instance, it's not random. It is driven by the equity metrics that are included in our CIP. And then I'll just finish my introductory comments here with a map that identifies those site-specific projects in green with the green stars. You can see where those are located. And then in addition, those play area, pool, and athletic fields projects are also included on this map here, kind of scattered throughout the city. With that, I will stop my share so that I can see you all again. I did receive one kind of formal written question, which I could address perhaps really quickly. It had to do with additional naturalized areas within parks, and also the potential damage to trees that may happen as we maintain our turf grass. I think the sentiment here, and the questioner can correct me if I'm wrong, the sentiment here is that our parks are pretty turf dominated right now. And there's some question about whether that can change in the future. And I think the answer is yes. We have created community-driven master plans for all the neighborhood parks and almost all of the regional parks in our system. And I would say that with extremely rare exceptions, all of those parks do identify more naturalized areas, which would be areas of a variety of types of landscapes that are not turf grass. Transitioning to that kind of management regime, however, is very different than the current staffing that we have in terms of equipment and expertise and training. So we have those master planned in and are implementing them as we go along. However, changing internal management practices does take a little bit more of a time because you are talking about staff infrastructure that exists in place today. In terms of the tree damage, I know this is something that our operations staff, primarily forestry, is consistently advocating for within our system. And that is an ongoing internal discussion that I can assure you is not entirely solved, but we are moving forward gradually on that topic. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Strand, to guide the proceedings from here. Thanks, everyone.
I think it would be useful just to, we'll take questions, and I see there are some, but if we can maybe go through in the order that the projects appear. But we do have a couple of people in queue, so we have Eric and Katrina.
Hello, Adam. Jeff, is it my question?
Yes.
Okay. Adam, so one of the challenges we have on the north side is, and I'll give you an example. Last year at Jordan Park, there was gunfire shot across a football team of 10 to 14-year-old kids practicing on a park. And my question is, within your designs, your current plans across the city, are you investing in securing these spaces so that they're safe for little kids to be doing football practice? And how is that planning integrated into your design and your construction work?
Sure, thank you for that question. Yes, we're the increase in particular in gun violence around and near our parks is something that has been a topic of conversation throughout the organization, especially over the past year or two as things have seemed to really ramp up. It was a driving force behind some of the reorganization of the park board that occurred through the most recent budget cycle, which actually created a whole new department called the Community Connections and Violence Prevention Department. They're not planners and designers, but they're more on the ground working with communities to try to mitigate these negative impacts. In terms of design, I will say that our master plans consider this quite a bit. In particular, on the north side, the North Service Area Master Plan has some very specific guiding principles around safety and around designs that ensure appropriate sight lines and appropriate access. But the master plans only go so far. As we move into, so that's one piece of it, one strategy. As we move into detailed design, for instance, at Jordan Park, we're actually about to initiate a project there at Jordan Park, a significant $1 million plus renovation project there. We'll look in more detail at the park itself and begin to understand in more detail through our design consultants and our internal staff what safety mitigations can be put in place. And we do that in part through that professional expertise, but also by bringing in a project advisory committee that involves others in our organization, including this violence prevention department, which is new, as well as our park police department. And then we also engage with outside stakeholders. And in the case of Jordan, I mean, we'll be, I'm sure, in close collaboration with the school that is there in order to, they're on the ground even more than we are. So we look to community stakeholders to also guide us in understanding how we can make these designs as safe as possible. The short answer is it's a pretty standard part of our process, but it varies park by park in terms of how the actual safety designs are expressed on the ground.
Thank you, Eric. Adam. So next in queue is Katrina, and then Sonia, and then John.
Hi, Adam. First of all, you guys do an incredible job with community engagement. And all of the projects I've seen you present in person, they change because of community engagement. And I was incredibly impressed with that. So the question I have is, I noticed on all of, the meetings I went to a while ago on all of the ones you submitted, you don't have any integration of renewable energy into those plans. Actually approved the building permit for the the PV shelter at Nokomis. But I do know that when you have projects, renewable energy projects that the community can see, it actually motivates the community to do their own. I was just wondering why you don't kind of integrate those in the infrastructure, in your plans as far as part of the capital improvements.
Sure, thank you for that question. That's again, as I mentioned at the top of the conversation, that's a fair but difficult question for us. So I'll try my best to answer it. Doing sustainable energy generation is challenging for us because not every park in our system has something that really needs that energy generation. So we first have to look at, what are those parks that have recreation centers, that have good solar capacity or good geothermal potential. And so we start to kind of limit the field right off the bat. And then in addition, these systems have a fairly significant upfront cost that does pay itself back over time. And unfortunately, that upfront cost has been a barrier to us in terms of funding. The PV installations that we did most recently, including at Nokomis and East Phillips and Parade, those were funded by grants from energy companies, and we're constantly on the lookout for those. We do have, outside of the capital improvement program itself, we do have adopted an adopted ecological system plan, which looks at improving environmental performance throughout our park system. It's essentially a toolkit as well as a policy guide to our staff for what we need to advance forward. And there's a whole section on renewable energy, including some mapping that helps us put right out front which of those facilities are going to be the most ripe for both solar and or geothermal. Because there's parts of the city where geothermal just won't work because of the soil type. So we've actually published maps so that we can know that right up front. Our hope is that we can continue to explore that and begin to integrate some alternative energy into our projects. However, I will be honest with you, we are so far behind on updating and making safe and accessible the base park infrastructure that we have on the ground, that has normally taken up all of the funding that we can ask for and then some. And the alternative energy production is something that we kind of have to do outside of that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Katrina. Any follow-up? Then we'll go to Sonia.
Hi, Adam. This is Sonia DeGarmo. I live in Lowry Hill and have been following the community engagement process for the redesign of Kenwood Park. And I'm not seeing where Kenwood falls in the scope of work that you're looking at for the next 5 or 6 years. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because it seems to me that the community is engaged, and I feel like there's going to be a lag between what is decided and the actual construction of it. And I'm not sure if that takes place in other neighborhoods as well. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, thank you for that question, Sonia. So we chose to create community engaged master plans for our entire system so that we could understand the system holistically all at once, rather than only plan those parks that were having capital improvements. And the reason we did that is because there is so much desire for so many different facilities in our parks, more than there ever has been, that we can't have everything in every park. And we needed to look at the system as a whole to understand how those things would be distributed. The disadvantage, which you identify, is that there are many parks where there will be a lag between that master plan and the actual capital improvement coming online. Some parks are having their capital improvements happen very quickly after the master plans, and some of them lag. A park gets brought into the park board's CIP and then submitted as a CBR under one of the projects I noted. Once it is ranked high enough under our equity metrics that it comes into that CIP. So Kenwood Park, for example, is actually currently ranked number 79 of 149 parks. We are currently up through, we're up into the 50s in terms of ranking in our CIP. So it will be a bit of time before Kenwood Park gets in, but there are essentially other parks that have greater need based on our metrics than Kenwood Park does. And that varies for each park. And those equity metrics are included with the CIP documentation that I sent along to the city and was probably forwarded to you. You can find Kenwood Park in there, and you can find its ranking numbers. And if you have specific questions about that park, I can follow up with you at a later time. I hope that answers the general question.
I do have one follow-up question regarding when something is broken in the park, or for example, a bulkhead gives way around a lake, is that something that is part of annual maintenance, or would that possibly open up an opportunity to create a project?
That's a good question. Thank you for that question. It actually depends on the scale. So if something breaks in a park, like if like a slide on a playground or a swing, then those are typically replaced as just part of our annual maintenance budget. A project that cannot be accomplished through our annual maintenance budget, something I would maybe say like a medium scale project, like let's say a recreation center's roof starts to cave in or leak significantly, we would then often use the park RP or rehabilitation funds in order to rectify those things, which is why those funds are not designated to specific parks year over year. They're designated into a variety of categories. So the example, you raise a bulkhead of a lake. We do have a below grade infrastructure category in this park RP, which could be an option. However, if a failure of something gets to a scale that even would overwhelm these rehabilitation funds, then we often have to try to scramble and find other funding. And some of you might remember several years ago, there was a mudslide that occurred that buried West River Parkway for some months. We had to marshal a lot of different types of funding sources in order to repair that, including our self-insurance funds and external FEMA money. So if the project gets to a scale that we can't handle it, then we have to go looking for other assistance. So the basic answer to your question is it depends on how big the breakage might be, and we take care of that in a few different ways.
Okay. All right, moving next, John, and then Katie.
Thanks. Hi, Adam. Nice to see you again this year. Jeff, before I dive in, I have a lot of questions. Did you want us to do this in chronological order, the project? How do you want us to do this?
That is what I was suggesting, but we've kind of been jumping around, so your choice, whatever Adam prefers, whatever makes the most sense to, I think use your best judgment, John.
Well, I have a lot of questions, so I'm not going to do all of them in one shot. I'll do a few of them now and then get back in the queue. So let's start with PRK02. This is, you might anticipate this one from me, Adam. I'm looking at the remaining bond authorizations. That's been going up steadily for several years. It was 400,000 in 2019. It was 1.6 million in 2020, and now it's almost 4 million at this point. And to put that in context, your annual requests are between $1 million and $1.4 million. So you've basically got 3 years worth of funding in remaining bond authorizations. Can you tell me where you're at with that and how you expect to spend that down?
Thank you, John. I did anticipate this question from you and from the group in general. And I didn't like those numbers when I started pulling together the click submittal this year. So I just want to be honest about that. We had done some good work to bring that significantly down. And in the last few years, we have gotten behind again. The primary reason for that is staffing. For 2 years in a row, the planning division had staff cut. And that in combination with some vacancies that persisted, we just weren't able to get as many projects in the ground as we had hoped to. The good news in terms of that with a remedy is that the Board of Commissioners did, in their kind of final budget amendment earlier this year, did reallocate one additional project manager position. We actually have offers, accepted offers for 2 project managers who will start within 2 months, and a third that'll probably be a little bit behind that one. So we're going to have 3 brand new people that are going to be immediately picking up a lot of these playground projects, because they are projects that are able to be implemented, especially even as you're learning the ropes. They're smaller and somewhat straightforward. So So yeah, I know we are behind. I recognize that. It's not a great position to be in. We're hoping to be able to accelerate that with this new staff coming on in the very near future. The other piece of it is that last year just really slowed us down. The difficulty of engaging in the context of last year, both the digital, but also with the amount of unrest and frankly, some of our staff getting pulled in other directions to address encampment issues, put us into an emergency mode for almost an entire 12 months. And some of those projects slipped on their timelines. And I have no other reasoning behind those two.
Yeah, and to be clear, I appreciate your answer. And, I expected that there were going to be some pretty legitimate reasons, especially this past year, why those might have creeped up. The real point of my question is, how quickly do you think you can realistically spend it down? I know you never like to give up funding, but, I can't speak for the whole committee. I'll speak for myself. I mean, this is a project that is consistently asked for the same amount of money. I think it's a very legitimate project overall, but at the same time, if these are taking up dollars that could be used somewhere else, and if you really can't use these requests that you're making in the near-term years, given the $4 million backlog you've got, we can allocate that somewhere else for now and up it later when you guys have the capacity again.
So understood. I'm just looking at the list of actual projects that are included in that $3.7 million backlog. And 8 of those, so roughly 8 times about $300,000 worth, are all underway, and we expect construction this fall. So eight of those projects, of a total of 8 of 14 active projects will be under construction this fall. So I actually think we're going to catch up very quickly.
Okay, that helps. Thank you. I'm going to ask 2 more, I think, quicker questions on PKR 03 and 4. I'm just, I see that there's no request beyond 2023 for pool and site improvements. So the question is, are you guys all caught up there, or are you just giving that one a break? And then similar question on 04, no request from 22 to 25.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think it's not a matter of that we're all caught up. It's just that with the advent of NPP 20 and doing larger consolidated projects, we hardly ever have a project anymore that is only a wading pool. We're often doing that in concert with other implementations in the park. So there are wading pools and athletic fields that get included in the PRKCP and the individual park projects, but we have very few standalone wading pools. The one wading pool that's left in there, which is Fuller Park, is actually a leftover from our old CIP. And the athletic field, we brought a new one in this year for the Lake Nokomis athletic fields, just because there's nothing else to do there. It's only athletic fields, so it felt like the most appropriate place to do it. But it's really just more of a technical change under NPP 20, and the fact that we're doing larger projects that may involve pools and athletic fields. We are definitely not caught up on pools and athletic fields.
Okay, thanks. That actually is a great lead-in for another question I have about the PRKCP project versus individual park projects, but I'll hold that for later and get back in queue.
Okay, thanks, John.
Okay, then we're going to Katie.
Hi, Adam. It's good to talk with you again. I have 2 questions. The race equity matrix was brought up, and I don't believe, and maybe this is a question for the finance staff, I couldn't find the race equity matrix a part of the parks materials. Am I just missing something, or is it not there?
Robert, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what was provided to you.
Yep, I'm sorry, just jumping in. As part of is this as part of the capital budget request form?
So the race equity matrix, it's typically like when Adam gives the bigger description, like presentation description, like he'll talk about the race equity matrix. And I know we've been given, when we've been in person, a printout of that before. And so it doesn't fit into an individual request. It's kind of a holistic part of how the parks plan.
These were submitted along with our maps and our CIP. So I'm happy to submit them again if that got lost in translation.
That would be awesome.
Yep. I can certainly check back through our materials that we received as well. I'm sorry if that was something that needed to be forwarded out as part of the submittal and didn't get forwarded out.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the second question is actually related to parkways, noting the change in how in their use over the last year. And I know that Public Works actually does the work on them. How is MPRB taking a look at that space and planning for it in the future?
Thank you, Katie. That's a good question. We have on our work plan in strategic planning to do a comprehensive parkways master plan in about 2 years. We have a couple of master planning efforts that are ongoing right now for for certain parks that require them. The regional parks require master plans. We've had some regional park master plans in the past year or two that the parkway conversation has been robust. We feel it's important to look at them holistically. And so we're going to do a parkways vision plan. We're not sure what we're going to call it yet, but a study and a vision plan within a couple of years.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you.
We're definitely aware that there's a lot of discussion about the changing needs of parkways, and we want to have that discussion more broadly with the community.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Willie, and then I put myself in queue, and then I think, John, you said you were going to go back in queue. Willie?
There you go. Hey, Adam, this is Willie. Question. Over here, the community is asking about the golf course. I haven't heard any talk about that from the park. What's going on with that? Is that in any of the budgets or what?
Willie, Mr. Bridges, are you referring to the Hiawatha Golf Course?
Yes.
Yeah, so Hiawatha Golf Course exists within a regional park boundary and is also considered an enterprise facility, meaning that it makes money. So for both of those reasons, we do not submit bond requests for our golf courses in generally, and we could not submit them for the regional park system.
Okay, yeah, no, neighbors are concerned about the park that's over by the Minnehaha Parkway over on Cedar, and the park that's over there that floods sometimes. So the community says, what are they doing to fix that? And is that in the budget to look at this year? As you're probably aware, a lot of conversation around that park.
Can you clarify again what park you're talking about specifically?
I'm talking about the one that's over on what is off Cedar, the golf course that's off Cedar in South Minneapolis.
Yeah, the Hiawatha Golf Course?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing in the capital budget request for Hiawatha Golf Course this year. Again, we couldn't fund that with local bonds. But in addition, there was a master plan process around that golf course. And at the moment, that master plan was actually rejected by our Board of Commissioners. So we actually don't have any guided improvements at that golf course. As things stand right now, from a policy direction, there will be no change to that golf course.
Okay. Jeff?
Okay, let's go to John next, and then I need another second to find something for my question.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to move on to the PRK, CP, and RP, the capital infrastructure and the rehab program. So I'll start with a similar question on both, which is, again, the remaining bond authorizations, which is quite high in both cases. Although, so in capital infrastructure, it's 4.75 million. And in park rehab, it's 4 million. So to be fair, that's not as large as PRK02 relative to the requests that you make each year. but nonetheless, it's pretty high, and it seems to be growing, or at least not shrinking in both cases over a 3-year period.
Yeah, thank you. Let me take the PRK first. The PRK numbers did grow as a result of the COVID amendment that the board adopted in 2020. So we devoted more rehabilitation money in 2020 and less of our park CP money in 2020 because community engagement was going to be really hard to do last year. So we needed to shift to projects that had a lot less community engagement. So there was a higher hill to climb in the PRK RP project to begin with. That changed after the click process for that originally. So the numbers are actually skewing higher than what you originally saw. However, again, there's multiple projects underway. We've got 3 roofs underway and 3 HVAC systems underway. And those are all things that construction is restarting right now as things thaw. And so I think we're going to see those 2020 numbers. So it's primarily in the 2020 year that unspent bond exists. We're going to see those 2020 numbers drop significantly by the end of the year. We've been tending to spend a particular year almost entirely by the end of the following year. So I think the 2020s are going to be completely spent down by the end of this year. So that's kind of a question of timing on that. The PRK CP, I'm going to have the same answer as for the playgrounds, John. This was really a question of our staffing levels, which I think are going to be rectified here, as well as the difficulty of engaging around some of these projects during 2020. But again, there's a bunch of them that are underway and in design, and I think we're going to see construction on probably about half of the projects, again, by the end of the year. So there's a lot of them that we're pretty close on, and it's just kind of a summer of vetting with the community and then getting those underway. But similar issues with PRK CP in particular.
Okay, thanks. And then my final thought is not a question, it's a comment and probably a request as well. As I look at the CP and RP projects, the capital infrastructure and the parks rehab project, more and more I think that it would be better if you guys took this further and broke these out into individual projects. And I think the model for it in the city would be paving projects, where we see a tremendous number of individual paving projects, so that these parks are all over the city. They're in different needs. And just take CP for a minute. That project over the coming 6 years is asking for $30 million. So granted, there's not a single individual park in there that exceeds 1.1 million, but nonetheless, the total is huge, $30 million. And what tends to happen with not that this is deliberate, it's just the nature of the way it's set up. What tends to happen is that some projects that may not be as strong as other projects, for lack of a better way to put it, slide through because they're all under the same funding. Whereas we could give you guys, I think, better and more useful feedback that you can do what you want with if these are broken out into individual projects, similar to the way paving does. And that's not to say that there aren't some program type projects that you could do. I think playgrounds is a good example. You could say that I could make the exact same argument about that, except that to me, playgrounds is pretty consistent across the board. So the only way that would become an issue was if we had a difference of opinion with the way you guys were addressing equity. And I don't see that as being a problem. You guys, frankly, have been the leaders in the city on how to address equity. So to me, the playground project is okay as it is. It's also much lower sums of money than CP and RP. So anyway, I'll just leave you with that comment. You're welcome to address it if you want to. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. So if you want to come back later, that's fine. I intend to author a comment for our report this year that addresses this. Thanks.
I appreciate that, John. The only I would just say I think that's something that we'll have to look at internally. Like more folks than me. So I appreciate that you're going to submit that as the formal comment. And, you know, as always, we'll take a serious look at that and figure out if there's a way to address it for next year. It's hard for me to respond one way or the other right now.
Thanks.
Vice Chair Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. So Adam, I want to compliment your agency or board, first of all, and you can see my neutral background here on the pollinator planting with Paul Chelson and others, real excellent community engagement event for the Shingle Creek Regional Ponds 3 years ago already. So thank you for that. I have a question. I support the full funding for the $300,000 annual PRK DT. And if it isn't outside your scope today, I grieve when I see the loss of the mature urban canopy. And I understand the decision that was made to, and this is out not the private property, but the boulevard, but is there, can you give us an update? I assume you're informed. Can you give us an update on the citywide status for emerald ash borer? I didn't really see that. And then is there any way, I know that other government entities have forestry departments, have gravel bed nurseries. And my understanding is it would be advantageous from a climate action, urban heat zone, big picture, that if we had larger trees faster, is that scientifically wrong? Or can you speak to the, can you just speak to the big picture scope of EAB and how we're doing and what's the situation, and both for private property and the public sphere?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chair Strand. I'm going to say maybe a couple things, but I'm going to have to get you a follow-up from our forestry department. Interestingly, they used to come to the Click Q&As with me, and after several years, there were never any questions about trees, so I sort of let them skip it. But I will get an answer prepared for you. I will say that we are in either the final or the penultimate year of the ash tree replacement program in the city. So I know there's a lot of conversation about how does that sort of special levy potentially translate into a more permanent canopy enhancement program, because we will be done with ash tree removal in the very near future. I will have to have forestry speak about what that has done for mitigating effects of emerald ash borer. I know that there are occasionally fines here and there, but I'll need to have them weigh in, and I think they've got some good maps about how that has moved through private trees and such. The gravel bed nursery question also, I can say just for my own recognizance that a mature tree has huge benefits that go beyond stormwater. You know, there's shade and a lot of other things, but a growing tree drinks a lot of water. So in terms of stormwater, the mature trees are great, but also growing trees are very good. I will have to ask forestry to answer the question about implementing gravel bed nursery and what the benefits of that might be, and maybe they can provide a more generalized answer about trees and stormwater and trees and environment and habitat. We've got some stuff in our ecological system plan, which I mentioned earlier, about the urban forest and about prioritizing plantings around urban heat island and some potential changes in practice, both in terms of equity, understanding environmental justice, as well as environment. So the ecological system plan's got some good forestry stuff in it. But Chair Strand, I will make sure you get a follow-up from our forestry division.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Steve Brandt.
Thank you. I have a series of questions, which will not surprise you. I wanted to start with Bryn Mawr. You mentioned a stormwater management facility that's being developed in cooperation with the Bassett Creek WMC. I know the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District has contributed to some park projects over the year, and I'm wondering if the Bassett Creek organization is going to contribute to the cost of this facility.
Yeah, Steve, thank you for that question. Bassett Creek Watershed Management Commission is actually paying for that facility in its entirety. And the advantage to the park is that we will be able to also then very inexpensively provide stormwater treatment for our own improvements, and also some pretty significant habitat enhancements there dovetailed along with it. But that is a project funded in the Bassett Creek CIP, which was deliberately aligned with our project to make sure we could do basically one project at once, but that funding will come from them.
Okay. Then I had a question about the fact that parks in locations such as Todd and Hiawatha School in the out years of PRK02 are starting to show up areas that are not wouldn't show up under the various indexes you use for social equity considerations, but might show up because of their park characteristics. And I wondered if that means that the equity side is starting to give way to the park characteristics side as you schedule projects, or whether that does not govern in this category PRK2, but only in PRK-CP.
I think your final statement is almost exactly correct.
Okay.
Within our CIP and within the equity metrics, the park board chose to also have a parallel playground rehabilitation program. Playgrounds are a unique facility in our system in that they are our most used and they create the most risk for the public in terms of accessibility and in terms of safety. So we have a lot of old playgrounds. So the PRK02, the ranking of the playgrounds in those, that is selected solely on the quality of the playground, not on the overall quality of the park, but those are the oldest, worst, most rundown playgrounds that we are looking at first. And the reason for that is because of the uniqueness of that particular type of facility. So that's why you see those kind of pop up all over town, seemingly with no relationship to the other equity metrics.
Great. I have a question about the Lyndhurst master plan. If you look at the scope of things that are contemplated there, the things called for in this master plan, like a new park building, relocated courts, daylighting the creek, a new 50th Street bridge, seem to outstrip the 1.8 million available by several factors. And not to say that those aren't interesting things, but they, I mean, do you provide any sort of reality check for a citizen advisory committee when you're doing park planning about the amount of resources they will likely have available?
So we've got two questions there, and I'll take them separately. The first question around the money not being enough to do what the master plan says. I fully recognize that, and there's some narrative about that in our submittal on that project. It's a long way out, and we're committed now to working with partners to figure out how to close those funding gaps as we continue to get closer. A fair similar example is at North Commons, where we also plan to reconstruct an entire rec center. In the interim between when we envisioned that project and the funding now coming available, we've gone out and gotten state bonding. We're in line for federal funding. So there's ways to close that gap with outside funding during the 6 years that it'll take us to actually get to that funding availability. The 1.8 million is in there because of our efforts to normalize the amount of funding that is requested under the CIP and in the CBRs park by park. So that just recognizes a desire for more consistency in the allocation amounts across our system. But we know that it will need more money, and we're already in conversation with our partners, primarily Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and also the City of Minneapolis Surface Waters, which has done a flood study in that area, who will probably be partners with us in that effort. In terms of the master planning question and how much we talk about cost and resources in a master plan, I do get this question a lot in community engagement venues about why we're not designing to the available resources. And my answer always is that we would sell ourselves short if we only design to the dollars that I know are in the CIP, because there's always outside money that can come to the table. We brought up the Bryn Mawr project just a moment ago. So there's about $1.5 million that's coming to that project from outside funds. The state bonded $5 million for North Commons Park. If I weren't designing according to the community's vision and the real need on the ground, then we would lose opportunities that might be out there to make transformational change. And in the case of Lyndhurst Park, it was felt that there needed to be a transformational change there because of quite a few other infrastructure issues, most notably the city's tunnel and flooding in the vicinity. And the real difficulty that we have a rec center across a busy street from the park that it serves. So those were a variety of problems that we needed to solve. We don't do that in every park, but it is important in some of those parks. And then it's our job to work to find partnerships and to move that funding forward.
Okay, Adam, I'd like to just run through the distinction between Park RP and Park CP, make sure that it's finally sunk in for me. As I understand it, Park RP is limited to 10 categories of rehab. It's sort of the spinach of taking care of our parks, compared to Park CP, which is where people are more focused not on the spinach, but on the dessert, the things that make a park fun to go to. Except, of course, that only parks with a budget of under 1.1 million are in Park CP. Do I have that correct?
You do, Steve. That's a great analogy. And if I could add one little technical thing onto the analogy, the Park RP, which is the spinach, we harvest a whole new batch of spinach each year. I can't tell you what's going to be in RP next year because we base that in part on need. Something falls apart and we've got to rehab it. The dessert, we're planning 6 years ahead, which is how you ought to plan dessert, right? I mean, that's pretty good. So that's the other piece of that.
Okay, thank you. And then I just saw a numerical discrepancy in Park 02 in between two different sources. The presentation that I got from you, I think, had a slide of 338,000 in 2022 for Park 02, but the CBR summary that we got from the CLIC staff lists a 2022 cost of slightly more than $1 million, and I just wondered which is correct.
Sorry, you're seeing, can you say that? I was looking at a couple spreadsheets here trying to find numbers that you were looking at. Can you say that again?
Yeah, we got a summary from CLIC staff of essentially each project by year. Mm-hmm. And for 2022, it had a figure for Park 02 of slightly more than $1 million, but in your presentation, there was a slide that seemed to suggest a figure of 338,000 in 2022.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. Let me, I'm going to very quickly, pardon my, yes. So in the slide that I think you're referring to on the introduction slide for Park 02, it says a cost estimate of 338,000 in 2022 plus escalation. I will clarify this in the future. It is unclear on the slide. I'll clarify it now. That is per park. So a typical playground project costs that amount. And then we are asking for multiple playground projects within that 1 million.
Got it.
Apologize for that. Yeah, that's not clear in the slide. I see it now. I'll adjust that.
The final question I have, it has to do with the disease tree program. This is sort of an ongoing program. It's essentially self-funded by property owners through either paying up front or assessment bonds when their tree is removed. It seems like it's self-funding, and I'm wondering sort of why it comes before Click for review. It reminds me of a totally separate category, which is outside of your department, called PV075, which is a paving project, which we've tried to get rid of in the past.
You know, the existence of Park DT predates me doing this work, so I'm actually not sure. It is unlike the rest of them. I don't know if any of the city staff on the call can answer that question. If not, I can ask around.
Okay, thank you.
We have, thank you, Steve. Bill Graves waiting.
Hi, thank you, Chair. So I'm new to this committee, so apologize if this is a question that's been answered in the past, but I'm curious if during your master planning and the resulting capital requests that you put in for the parks, that if there's any sort of equity consideration in terms of private fundraising, or if you have policies against, or what is the kind of interplay between private fundraising for parks improvements and kind of allocation requests?
I can probably answer this a few different ways. So if I don't quite get to it, then you can do a follow-up. In our equity metrics, one of the criteria for when a park is invested in under our normal CIP, we look at historic investment in the park, how much money we've spent in that park over the last 15 years. And we do include park dedication and private philanthropy in that number. So if a park has gotten a significant amount of private investment in the recent history, it will rank lower in our equity metrics. So that's a means of, on one hand, kind of offsetting those parks that do get a lot of philanthropy, which tend to be in the wealthier parts of town, from those that don't. In terms of philanthropy, generally speaking, we have, based on staff availability, we have accelerated projects in master plans when philanthropy comes forward. One current example is in Thomas Lowry Park, where we are going to rehabilitate and reconstruct the Seven Pools Fountain with a combination of park board dollars and a significant private philanthropy. That park was very low on the equity metric, but it's able to be accelerated because of that philanthropy. We do seek philanthropy for projects that are in our CIP. This is the third and perhaps final way of looking at this, unless you want to do a follow-up. So we often do seek philanthropy to close gaps on other projects that we're implementing anyways. So we may look at donations in a park where where we know we're going to be a little short from doing what we're going to do. So that's typically the responsibility then of a project manager around that park, to identify gaps and to seek ways of closing that, either through grants or philanthropy. So those are maybe kind of 3 ways that touches our investments. And if I didn't hit your question, feel free to follow up.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear. I think I maybe just have one follow-up and then I'll cede time.
Sure.
So take the Lowry Thomas Park as an example, and when combining city and public resources and private resources, you have a total amount that maybe, I'm just making numbers up, doubles the amount of overall investment and compared with a park in a lower income neighborhood. If I'm hearing you right, that overall investment is then considered for future investments, so that future requests would be significantly lower in dollar amount, not equal to the need of that park because of the existence of private philanthropy and historic improvements to the park.
It won't necessarily, to be honest, we're not probably far enough into NPP 20 to see how an example like Lowry would play out. But my gut says right now that we wouldn't necessarily lower the dollar amount of investment, because we've normalized those amounts and we want to make sure that every park gets an NPP 20 investment that is consistent across the board. What it would definitely do is it would deprioritize that park. So its funding would likely come much later than it would have, because its equity score will be lower because of that investment. So it's a question maybe more of timing in terms of how it affects our equity metrics right now, rather than the future amount of investment by the park board NPP 20 funds.
Okay, thank you.
All right, members, we don't have anyone else in queue at the moment. Any additional questions, or it's theoretically possible we may be, we have Willie, and then we'll see about Willie.
As you know, I always ask about this every year. The McCray Park on 46th in Chicago, what's happening with the building there? Is that it's on there, but where does it fit in all of this?
The building specifically, or park improvements more generally?
We can talk about all of it.
Yeah. So McCray, recently, the athletic fields were redone.
Right.
And we're currently have a project underway right now to redo the playground. That's under the PRK 02 project, but it's in an earlier year, so it's not showing up in the request this year.
Okay.
We expect that will be under construction this fall. We're doing community engagement right now.
Okay.
And then McCray's actual equity ranking number is something I would have to look up, but there's not currently a larger allocation for McCray in our CIP, but it's very close. McCray's equity ranking is number 62, which probably brings it into the CIP next year.
Okay.
For a larger implementation.
Okay, I'll check with you then again.
Okay.
Thanks, Willie.
Yes.
Did we have that on the click bingo? I'm sorry, you brought it up. Well, members, again, I'm not rushing this process at all. So if there are any other questions, especially members who have not posed questions yet. Otherwise, 12:05, and we were scheduled for a 12:20 break. I would just ask Adam to, if he has any concluding remarks, and then we'll see if there are any other hands, and then we'll talk about our next steps.
The only concluding remarks I'd make is just to again reiterate my thanks to you, and to stress, specifically that the comments that you make here, we take them very seriously, and we've modified some practices, specifically the the standalone PRK projects were created based on CLIC guidance. I'm hearing there's at least some desire to go further in terms of having more standalone projects. The normalization of funding that we do now to make sure that the amounts are equitable across our system came directly from conversations with this body. And that's not even just you having an effect on what goes before the city council. That has modified how I do the entire park board CIP. So I appreciate your questions. I appreciate the detail that you all take in looking at all of this, and the intelligence with which you look at all these numbers. And I know it's a lot to get through, but I really honor your work, and it has been a pleasure to get to know many of you, and to hear from new faces, and to continue to work together on these critical improvements for the people in Minneapolis. Parks are a big deal around health and wellness, and I appreciate that you all seem to recognize that this is also important infrastructure for our city. And thank you for all the hard work that you put into making those park improvements a reality.
Thank you, Adam. I know that one of our former members pointed out that we were only doing roughly a 6-hour session, and that we weren't doing like the full 8-hour in-person session, as if we were kind of taking it easy because of the virtual meetings. But anyway, thank you. I applaud your presentation. Thanks for providing such great information again.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
All right, so members, we're 10 minutes before our scheduled break. I'd like to kind of get a sense from our staff and the task force chair and co-chair about, and I see John is ready to step in, the next step. So if I know that Chair Eric will have heavy lifting today, and John.
Yeah, I mean, this probably applies to Eric more than me today and my task force, but I would just move that we keep the break short and get on with the business so we can get on with the rest of it's shaping up to be a beautiful day out there.
Right.
Ditto.
Okay, so are we good with like a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Say, Jeff,
okay, so
this is Justin. If I could just
Justin?
quickly jump in on a technical point. At this time, Teams doesn't want to allow me to assign members to individual breakout rooms. So I do want to just use this 5-minute break to see if I could troubleshoot. I didn't want to do it while staff were presenting in case there's more serious technical difficulties. If I'm unable to get the breakout rooms to work like they did on Saturday, my backup option is to have human development stay in this room, as I know they need to quickly get going, and then a separate calendar invite for, let's say, 12:20 will be sent to the transportation task force, and we will have a separate meeting. But I will let you all know what the end result is. We'll see if we can get into the breakout room seamlessly or if we need to do a separate meeting invite.
John, how much time will transportation need today?
We'll need very little time. I'll just briefly go over our agenda for the day. We have one project, BR 135, to go back and revisit. Beyond that, that's the only project we need to rate today. Beyond that, I was going to spend a little bit of time talking about our first task force meeting, which will be next week, May 5th, and then open it up if anybody's got any questions about any part of the process. So I don't anticipate we'll need more than 20 to 30 minutes, and it could be shorter than that.
And Eric, you'll need about, what, an hour?
Probably. We'll try to keep it short.
Okay.
Which means an
All right.
hour. Yep.
So let's say come back at 12:20. That'll give Justin time to do his thing. And then at that time, I'll read these final remarks before we go off to our breakouts, if that's feasible. Dan?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, with the ratings that Human Development will be doing today on the different projects and the ones that the task force primarily got through the last time. I'm always a little ambivalent of digging deeper on these spreadsheets until I get everything together on one. And was hoping that just to put in a note for the staff that having a new CBR spreadsheet that came out with the appropriate X's and everything else would be helpful soon. Thank you.
Good point. Amelia?
Thank you. I would just note that we have this meeting scheduled till 1 today. And it is a work day, so I know staff's schedules are filled up after that. So I would just advise that if the human development team doesn't finish up by 1, you move some of that work to the next task force meeting that we have set up for the next week.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so 5-minute break, come back at 12:20.
Yep, Jeff, in the interest of just speeding this up, human development will return to this room and a separate invite will get sent to transportation. So after the break, you can read your closing remarks and then that group will need to switch over to a new meeting.
Or you want me just to read it now?
I think that would be great.
Okay. So with that, we've completed all items on the regular CLIC agenda for this meeting, with the exception of the task force breakout rooms. I will ask members and staff if there are any other matters to come before this full CLIC meeting. Seeing none. If not, without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned at the conclusion of the task force breakout rooms, which will be 1 p.m. The next meeting will be the task force meetings on Wednesday, May 5th. Is that not correct? May 5th, 2021, noon to 1:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone. So we'll resume in our breakout rooms, except for the HD stays here and transportation goes to a new room.